one at a time, of course, and put their ballots in the ballot box and got a sticker that said I voted. So it was a really exciting process. So I'm excited to have it happen again next year. And I plan to tap Francesca and the other fifth graders to help me because now they're the experts too. So
it was nice to see it to fruition because I happened to be dropping by when they were announcing Kick Up an Hour, stopped into Mrs. Jurgles' fifth grade classroom as they were watching the announcement of the winner. So from like start to finish, it was been like a really nice process. And I'll be talking more about social studies in a little bit. So like I said, perfectly timed recognition today. So congratulations, Francesca.
You can go back.
Yes, that would be great.
Oh, pictures. Wait, no, come back. You want me to be with her? You want her by yourself? Oh, all right, okay, all right.
Very good. Congratulations.
All right, nice. I keep cutting in front of the camera, sorry.
He's part of the show.
Put that on our social media.
Yes.
Thank you. And you're welcome to stay, but we understand if you have to go as well as why we put you first. Thank you.
Okay, you got this.
I've not been there.
I love that we did this. Kid governor.
I know, it's
Absolutely
amazing.
love the entire thing.
This is the first year.
Amanda wants to run her campaign. Nothing, she's really mean.
Does she want to be part of it? Next is the officers. So first I wanted to welcome officially, I mean, we're later, unfortunately, but Diana and Nikki who are joining us this evening. So congratulations, and we're happy to have you as part of our Board of Ed team.
Happy to be here.
We have election of officers coming up. It's a lot of motions and voting, to be honest. So we're ready. Is the position of chair. So I'd ask for nominations for chairperson for the Hebron Board of Education.
I'd like to nominate Heather Pettit for board chair.
Second.
Thank you.
Who was the second?
Nikki seconds. Thank you. And I do accept the nomination. Are there any other nominations for board chair? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. So I would ask if we would have a motion to close the nominations for chair of the Board of Education.
So moved.
And can I have a second?
Second.
Schmeisel, seconds. And I need to do a roll call closing the nomination. Amanda Veneziano.
Aye.
Alex Crawford.
Aye.
Joe Margettis.
Aye.
Nicole Matthews. Diana Morales.
Aye.
Allison Schmeisel.
Aye.
Heather Pettit, aye. And now if we can have a roll call on voting for Heather Pettit as chair of the Board of Education. Amanda Veneziano.
Aye.
Alex Crawford.
Aye.
Joe Margettis.
Aye.
Nicole Matthews.
Aye.
Diana Morales.
Aye.
Allison Schmeisel.
Aye.
Heather Pettit. And I'm going to abstain.
You can vote for yourself.
All right, I'll vote aye. I can, but thank you all very much. I appreciate that. So the motion passed in regard to Heather Pettit as board chair. Next is the election of the vice chair.
I would like to nominate my mate, Amanda Veneziano.
Okay. Amanda Veneziano. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Joe Margettis seconds. Do you accept the nomination?
I do, thank you.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations? All right, so I'd ask for a motion to close nominations.
So moved.
Ellie Schmeisel moves. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a second. And then we'll do a roll call to close the nomination. Amanda Venezano,
Aye.
Alex Crawford,
Aye.
Joe Margaitis,
Aye.
Nicole Matthews,
Aye.
Diana Morales,
Aye.
Allison Smeisel,
Aye.
Heather Pettit, aye. And now we do a roll call vote on Amanda Veneziano as Vice Chair of the Hebron Board of Education. Amanda Veneziano,
Aye.
Alex Crawford,
Aye.
Joe Margaitis,
Aye.
Nicole Matthews,
Aye.
Diana Morales,
Aye.
Allison Smeisel, Heather Pettit, aye. So the motion passes unanimously as Amanda as Vice Chair. All right. Now moving on to the nominations for Board of Education Secretary. Is there a nomination for Board of Education Secretary?
I would like to nominate Allison Smigel.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second that?
And a second. Sorry, I'm just writing these down. Are there any other nominations for Board Secretary? Any other nominations for Board Secretary? Any other nominations? All right, so I would ask for a motion to close the nominations.
Heather, you forgot to ask Al.
Do you accept the I'm just going to not let you say no. I was just wondering, do you accept the nomination for Board Secretary?
I do, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I almost did it.
You almost got it, Heather.
A roll call to close the nominations. Did I ask for the motion?
Motion. So moved.
Is there a second to close the nomination?
Second.
Okay, Alex seconds. All right, a roll call to close the nominations. Amanda Veneziano,
Aye.
Alex Crawford,
Aye.
Joe Margaitis,
Aye.
Nicole Matthews,
Aye.
Diana Morales,
Aye.
Allison Smeisel,
Aye.
Heather Pettit, aye. And now we will have a roll call on Allison Smeisel as Board of Education Secretary. Amanda Veneziano,
Aye.
Alex Crawford,
Aye.
Joe Margaitis,
Aye.
Nicole Matthews,
Aye.
Diana Morales,
Aye.
Allison Smeisel, Heather Pettit, aye. So the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
You did it.
Amanda and Ally. So before I move on to the committees, which are, I'm going to pass this to you, and maybe you can pass yours to Ally.
What is it? Oh, how official.
You gotta be official.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda are committee assignments and liaisons. So we have 4 committees and then several liaison positions. And so you don't have to be voted on. They're more appointed by the chair, but really I like to do a volunteers. I will appoint the chair for each committee. So let me start the Communications and Community Engagement Committee. So I'm just going to read a little bit about what each committee is, since we have new board members here, and also for members of the public who might not know exactly what each committee does. So first, the Communications and Community Engagement Committee is responsible for the alignment of all constituencies with regard to the district advancement plan. The responsibilities of the committee include developing and maintaining a system-wide engagement and communication plan, monitoring the effectiveness of communications, citizen involvement, and community awareness of Hebron Public School mission, vision, and goals. So Communications Committee, Amanda, you are the current chair. Are you interested in staying chair of that committee?
Yes.
All right, Amanda will chair. Amanda will be chair of the Communications Committee. Are there other members of the board? I know Ally Schmeisel, you have been on communications. Are you interested in staying on communications?
Sure.
Okay. Is there anyone else on the board that would like to be on the Communications Committee? All right, so we're going to keep the committee as is. So next is the policy committee. So the policy committee is responsible for updating and maintaining current policies reflective of current laws and regulations, as well as reflective of the values of the community in matters of more discretion. So the responsibilities of the policy committee include staying well informed of changes in educational and employment law as they come down from the state, and developing new and updated policies for consideration of the full Board of Education. So currently, I chair that. I don't have to chair that. As chair, you're ad hoc to all the committees. I'm certainly welcome to if nobody would like to do that, but I don't know if there's anyone here that's interested in the policy committee. Currently, our members are myself and Ally. So I would say, and I know we have 2 more committees to do, so, and maybe, Nikki, Alex, and Diana, like for our bylaws, one of the committees we have to assign you to, but certainly at your discretion. So I know we have 2 more. So I'm happy to continue chairing that, so I will continue chairing the policy committee. Ally, do you want to stay a member of that?
Sure.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to be a member at this time? Okay. And as far as our policies go, the full policies always come to the board for a first read, a second read, and then a vote. So they will always come to the board anyway. Then we have Resource Management Committee. So the Resource Management Committee is responsible for obtaining and managing the resources that are needed to achieve the mission, vision, and goals of the Board of Education. The responsibilities include monitoring of metrics to ensure the district resources are utilized effectively, efficiently, and equitably to achieve the district advancement plan. Work with the superintendent and business manager regarding the development of the district's annual budget, and monitor community demographic information and facility usage to ensure a safe and optimal learning environment. So Joe Margaitis, you're currently chair. Would you like to stay chair of that?
I do. I will.
All right. So Joe will stay chair. Other members of Resource Management, Amanda Veneziano,
I would like to be removed, please.
be removed?
Yes, please.
Okay. So is there anyone else interested in being part of, Alex, you want to be?
I'll be a member.
Okay. Alex Crawford. Great. Is anyone else interested in that committee?
They're really fun.
Committee.
He's trying to sway people to his committee.
We should have done that for communication.
Right? I didn't know we could.
Didn't work, so.
I didn't know we could campaign. I would have done that for.
There's only one more committee left. You guys.
I know. So the last committee is the Student Growth and District Advancement Committee. We did a lot of work on this committee last year, to be honest, and we came out with a wonderful district advancement plan. A lot of that is attributed to Dr. Baird and the team. The District Advancement Committee is responsible for reviewing and overseeing appropriate metrics to evaluate student, staff, and district performance. The responsibilities of this committee include work with the administration concerning the development of appropriate measures and metrics for all areas of district, school, and student performance, primary responsibility for the development and review of the board and superintendent evaluation processes, and foster the strategic planning process in regular cycles. So that's kind of our work. Really, we're overseeing kind of, getting regular updates from Dr. Baird, obviously at the board meetings, but just to make sure our district advancement plan is advancing. So currently the chair is vacant because Joe Zuzell was the chair of that committee. And Joe Margaitis and myself as ad hoc attended those meetings. So Joe, are you still interested in being a member of that committee?
I would defer at this point. No?
What do you mean?
You're staring me down.
Oh, what do you mean? Wait, you defer like the picking of the members. Sorry, like.
If it's not taken,
Okay.
which I have a feeling it might be,
Oh,
but
that's fine. Okay. All right. So, Dan and Nikki.
I actually would like to reconsider the Resource Management Committee. for myself, because I think my strengths are probably better in that area.
And resource management?
Yes.
You want to be a member there?
You can add me to that list.
Okay. I will add you as a member. So resource management will be Joe Margais as chair, Diana Morales, and Alex Crawford as members. All right.
Good with that, Joe?
Sure, of course. More the merrier.
All right, student growth. Nikki,
Yes, I would like
is anyone else interested in student growth and district advancement? I will be a member. As well. I mean, ad hoc, but I would like to see it go. So, would you like to?
Yes, I know what you're going to ask me. That's fine.
Would you like to chair it? I will be there. Okay. So Nikki will chair the District Advancement Committee. All right, so communications is Amanda as chair, Ally Schmeisel. Policy Committee, Heather Pettit, chair, Ally Schmeisel. Resource Management Committee, Joe Margaitis, chair, Alex Crawford and Diana Morales. And Student Growth and District Advancement Committee, Nikki Matthews, chair, and Heather Pettit. All right. So we're not done. Now we have liaisons. So the board has several liaisons to different community organizations' meetings or boards. And the purpose of liaison is really just to go attend and find out what's happening at those meetings and come back and report to the board. It's not really to be part of their board or to vote, except with the exception of maybe school readiness, because that's here in our school system. But otherwise, it would just be to attend the meeting, come back and kind of report to the board anything that we might need to know that's going on. So, and maybe somebody can speak to, so some of these I haven't done, so I don't know if Dr. Baird or, so for safety and security liaison. So I don't know if you want to, can you tell a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So the safety and security team also serves as a district safe school climate team. So we meet 4 times a year under state statute, and we review any bullying incidents, obviously not with student names or specifics, but for themes. And then we discuss any safety and security matters. Last year, we also talked about the safety and security grant that was available and prioritized items for that. We also talked about that at the Resource Management Committee as well. But that's the primary charge of the safety and security team. It's not a requirement for a board member to be a part of that team. There is a requirement for a parent to be a part of that team. But traditionally, there has been at least one board member who has been a liaison to that team.
Thank you.
They meet during the day. So in terms of like work schedules and things of that matter, we traditionally have met at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We've been meeting via Zoom. I don't know if we'll continue to do that forever, but this year we've continued to meet via Zoom.
All right, so currently, so we can have more than one liaison, but I would ask, like, not to have, I wouldn't ever want more than, we don't really need 3 to be a liaison, honestly, but I would never want more than 3 because I wouldn't want to require any kind of board quorum when posting at any of the meetings. That's what I wanted to say ahead of time. So currently, safety and security liaison are Amanda Veneziano and Ally Schmeisel. So I don't know.
So I really do enjoy that committee, just so for others to grab it, but I am no longer a parent in this school system. So I feel like it would be better served, because you have to have a parent, if I remove myself. That way it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. So I could like to take myself off.
Okay.
But it is a great,
Okay. That's good.
I'd like to stay.
Okay. Ally Schmeitzel, you are the liaison. Is there anyone else that wants to be a liaison? We don't need more than one, but if somebody else is interested, you're welcome to join Ally as well.
We do have some staff members that are parents too, so we're sort of like, we have safety in numbers in terms of meeting the statutory requirements. Ally, we're happy to have you.
All right. Ally, you are the safety and security liaison. So Shared Resource Advisory Group is something that our board voted to create last year. It was kind of in response to some, working with Marlboro, Andover, RAM, kind of our regional partners to find ways to maybe collaborate and save efficiently and fiscally. I'll be honest with you, it's been a little bit of a struggle getting all the partners. It wasn't just the boards of ed that were involved. We also invited the selectmen, town manager, Parks and Rec from each town. So we pretty much invited somebody from each town office of all these different, all our different partners. We've changed, many of our partners have also changed chairs, vice chairs, board members, so that has changed a little bit. So we held off on our December meeting because all the boards are choosing their chairs and vice chairs at this time, and usually that person is the one that attends the meeting. But really, the meetings are for. So some of the ideas that we've talked about in the past were sharing, kind of like facilities, like in regard to like landscaping, which Parks and Recs provides for us, but other towns are looking for that as well. IT services, for instance, Dave, we have a partnership with AHM, that Dave McKinney also helps them with their website. So different ideas in regard to that. We have a transportation contract that we're all involved in, every single town plus RAM that we all share to save costs. So there's those kind of things that are going on right now. So I don't know, currently it's myself chairing that committee because it's a Board of Ed advisory group, and then we invited all of our regional partners. Joe Margaitis and Amanda Veneziano also sit on that with me. So I don't know if you're still interested.
I would like to stay on.
Yes, okay.
I'll go ahead
Amanda?
and pull myself if that's okay.
Yeah. All right. Is there anyone else that would be interested in the Shared Service Advisory Group at this time? All right, so Joe.
I'll just add too, this is great because I feel like it's such good new learning for people watching out there, civics in action, and for new board members too. The reason why it sits sort of like on our agenda is that under open meeting law, we want somewhere in all the entities for it to live out there for people to know that things are posted, there are minutes, et cetera. So our board sort of like serves that purpose. And that's part of why Heather chairs that. Yep.
All right. The Hebron Education Foundation, we did have a liaison for that. I don't think that we need one going forward. I think they're just looking internally on how they're going to move forward if they are moving forward. So at this time, I'm not going to ask anyone to be a liaison on that, so I just wanted to speak to that very briefly. If at some point they start meeting again on a regular basis, we can revisit that. The PTA liaison for Hebron is currently Amanda.
Again, since I do enjoy it and I'm happy to keep it, but since I'm not a parent, I think it might be better served if a parent who has someone in PTA, I think it would just make sense. But if no one's interested, I'm happy to keep it.
Okay. So is anyone on our board interested in being the PTA liaison and kind of going to their meetings when they have them? And I think, how often do they occur?
Every other month.
So they're, every other month they have a meeting and just popping in. So I think it's always good to have a partnership with the PTA too, with the Board of Ed.
Absolutely. They're great to work with.
Anyone? No. Amanda, you want to keep it?
I'm happy to keep it.
Sorry, it's a scheduling thing for me.
No, totally understandable.
No, I understand. And, I was going to speak about that in my, well, I will speak about it later. Okay. Amanda, thank you. We can speak about it a little bit. So wellness liaison, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or Ally or Dr. Baird, if you want to give a little
I would
insight
defer
into
to Dr. Briere.
Oh, Dr. Baird.
Like I need to sell it. Yeah, it's a great committee, similar to the safety security meetings. They are 3 to 4 times a year. At this time, they're on Zoom. Someday we'll go back in person. A lot of different perspectives from across the district are on that committee. So we have the school psychologists, the school nurses, myself. We have great representation from the teachers as well. Cover topics broadly under wellness. We talk about our SEL efforts. We talk about suicide prevention and post-pension efforts. We talk about broadly staff and student wellness efforts as well across the year. What are we doing in each school? And periodically throughout the year, those meetings are important to get updates from everyone on the team. So it's a nice broad team. Again, one day we'll be back in person. Right now, they're on Zoom. And similar to the safety and security meetings, they're during the school day, based on teachers' availability to make those. And Mrs. Schmeisel is a great representative on that committee currently.
You got to keep it. It's
Wow.
your wheelhouse.
Thank you. Ally Schmeisel.
I'd love to keep
You're
it.
currently-
But if someone is, who's new or somebody who's interested in it,
We could also have two,
Definitely
or so. I mean, it's not like we have to only have one. Want to go beyond two?
I'm interested in wellness as well.
Okay, all right. So Ally Schmeisel and Nikki Matthews will be our wellness liaisons. Thank you. Our student liaison is not one of us. It's something that I actually asked to be put into policy several years ago on our board because I really felt it was good to have student representation on our board so we could hear from them or get a report from them on what's happening or any idea that they have or anything that they want to convey to us. And also so they, as part of civics and, student governor, now that we have that program, like bring back to the student body and they could report out kind of what happened at the Board of Ed. Not, the details of budget, or anything like that, but just overall, like what's happening at the board. So that's kind of that position. So that'll be a rotating member of the student council who will either be on video or eventually come back in person and join us at the table. And then school readiness liaison, and Dr. Briere can tell a little bit about what that entails.
Sure, yep. School readiness liaison, so the School Readiness Council meets monthly, mid-afternoons, right when the school day ends, also right now on Zoom. One day we'll go back in person. We have the school readiness grant afforded to us each year, so the council meets monthly effectively to oversee the budget expenditures, use of funds, programmatic updates, family engagement activities a preschool team helps facilitate, and the like. So that's the School Readiness Council, so a monthly commitment there.
Thank you. And usually it's still meeting at 3:30 usually, right?
Correct, yep.
Yep. All right, so once a month at 3:30. So right now, Amanda Veneziano is our school readiness liaison.
I am happy to keep that.
All right. So Amanda will keep that. Is there anyone else that's also interested in that? Like I said, we can have one person. That's what we've had historically, but if somebody else is also interested, they're welcome to join. All right, so Amanda. So for liaisons for safety and security, we have Allison Smeisel. For shared services, we have Heather Pettit, Joe Margaitis. For PTA liaison, we have Amanda Veneziano. For wellness liaison, we have Allison Schmeisel, Nikki Matthews. And student liaison is a rotating member of the student council. And school readiness will be Amanda Veneziano. All right.
Negotiations.
Thank you very much.
Negotiations?
Negotiations.
Yeah, there's one more.
Oh, you put negotiation.
You said less.
So we can have a discussion about this. So my thought was initially we have two potentially big negotiations coming up within the next 6 months or so. And that would be the non-certified staff group. So that will include paras, custodians, secretaries, faculty, staff that falls into that category. And then the teacher negotiations, which will be probably more towards summer, and the state actually lets us know when we can begin those negotiations. But there are two big negotiations. So we've never had a negotiations committee. We don't have to have a negotiations committee, but it's something because we have two coming up, and I just thought it would be maybe potentially it would make sense to have a negotiations committee. So that way, I'm not sure who's ever had that experience. Obviously, nobody on the board here, but like in their job or in a previous experience, I don't know who has that, or if you want to learn about it. And then those people that staying on the negotiations could be on for the second one because they would kind of see what that was looking like. So I would like to be on the negotiations committee for both of those. But I'm open to discussion. We don't have to have a committee. We can choose people as the contracts come as well. So,
I would like to join you on that negotiations committee.
okay.
Joe Margaitis.
So
I will also join.
historically, the negotiations, at least in my experience, were after the school day. I mean, you don't have negotiations during the school when, people are teaching. So,
That's the only consideration. It's usually like in the evening, often for
Yeah.
many, many hours that evening.
sometimes
It just really,
it goes smoothly and we could be like,
my experience.
so, I mean, it's not forever, it's, and the attorneys involved, the unions involved, their attorneys. So is there anyone else? So myself, Joe, you're interested? Diana? I mean, it's up to you. Do you think we should have a committee, I guess is my question.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll have a negotiations committee. We'll add that.
Although I would say we'd start with the committee, and if we find we don't need it, we can always disband it.
Right, okay. Heather, Diana, Joe. I have 4.
You can.
Yeah, because it's negotiations.
Negotiations are non-meetings, so they're not.
They're non-meetings, so I don't have to worry about quorum. So if there's somebody else that wants to be on the negotiations committee, you can. We don't have to worry about only being 3 in this particular instance. So I don't know if anyone else is interested, you're welcome to join as well.
Yeah, I would be interested.
Alex? Okay.
Barring schedule allowance.
Okay. Great. So I'll put us 4 on that. And usually, like historically, a member of the Board of Finance has also joined our negotiations committee. In the past, Janet Fedasky has done our last negotiations from the Board of Finance, so usually one of their members joins us as well. Awesome. So as they come closer, we'll reach out to them and see who they'd like to have join us. All right, did I miss anything else? Nope. All right, thank you very much. So next on our agenda is student liaison report.
So I know we have a video from student council.
I wasn't sure which ones it was.
Just happened. Did I delete it while I wasn't?
Undo. That's your saving grace.
That's correct. I'm sorry, Tom, is there audio on this?
It's muted.
Yeah, it looks like it's muted.
I'm no good with this keyboard from a distance.
I don't know how you're doing that.
I know, actually impressive that you got that.
Yeah, it looks like it's muted. There you go.
Oh, that was great.
That's nice.
Yay.
That was great.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they do this year, too.
Yes. And I'm excited that, Mr. Larkin can correct me, but it used to be just sixth grade, right? And now we've got, am I right about that? And now it's like gone down, and I love that. I think that's amazing. All right, thank you. So next on our agenda is public comments. The Hebron Board of Education values the public comment period as it represents an opportunity for members of the public to express their views to the board on matters within the board's authority. Procedurally, public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, as citizens will be asked to identify themselves. All comments must be directed to the board and not to any individual board member or individual member of the administration. The board and the administration will not respond to questions or engage in dialogue during the public comment period. The board and the administration will determine when and how to address questions that arise during the public comment period. Is there anyone here that would like to make a public comment at this time? All right. Moving on, next is the approval of minutes. So I would like to make a motion, I would ask for a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of November 10th, 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And it moves, Ellie Schmeisel seconds. Is there any discussion? All right. I'll do a roll call vote. I'm just going to. Amanda Veneziano.
Aye.
Ellie Schmeisel.
Aye.
Alex Crawford.
Aye.
Diana Morales.
Aye.
Joe Margaitis.
Aye.
Nikki Matthews. All right, motion passes unanimously.
There you didn't vote.
Next is the resource management meeting on November 10th, 2021. We didn't have a quorum, so Joe Margaitis as chair, do you accept the minutes as presented?
I do accept as presented.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, you didn't vote.
Oh, aye, sorry.
Sorry.
This is why you have to submit me. All right, thank you. So next, Dr. Baird, is the district advancement update on social studies.
All right, great. So I'm going to introduce Allie Kenoff. Did I say that right? Cannon. All right. I really know her as Allie Losi, but she got married over the summer, and we're all sort of like having a hard time with that transition. And Julia Clark to come on up. While they're coming up and setting up, Allie and Julia are our curriculum specialists in district. Allie is here at Gilead Hill, and Julia is over at Hebron Elementary. As we were developing the district advancement plan last year, there was an ask of a couple of the board members to look more at our social studies programming curriculum. I think people are pretty well know that we really commit to like a STEAM education experience, and STEAM is a big part of our programming, but we have wanted to spend some time on the humanities as well. You heard about that tonight with the Kid Governor program as part of that. But the board wanted to have an audit of our social studies curriculum. We know that there were new standards that were passed, I want to say a year and a half ago, and really are further ahead than just doing an audit this year. So this is an area in the district advancement plan where we really are ahead of schedule of where we want it to be by June. So I'll let Julia and Allie take it away.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Again, I'm Allie Caniff. I'm new to this role. I'm the Curriculum and Instruction Specialist here at Gilead Hill. Julie Clark, I too am new to the role at Hebron Elementary School. Thank you so much for having us. So to start, I'm just new to this clicker. Bear with me for a second. We wanted to just provide you with a window into the teaching and learning and resources around our social studies curriculum at this point. The work that you'll see in this presentation that Julie and I collaborated on together was guided by our district advancement plan. Within that advancement plan, there are goals, visions, and missions set forth to ensure that our students and our teaching is enhanced and equity focused and vertically aligned. Social studies plays a key role in our vision for our students and developing students that are champions for equity, innovation, academic, and artistic excellence, compassion, leadership, and wellness. One of the specific action steps within our curriculum and instruction goals this year was completing a social studies audit. The audit completion brought to light necessary future work in enhancing our curriculum and making sure that we're aligned with current frameworks. So our work began with a document called the C3 Frameworks. The C3 Frameworks provide guidance to states on the concepts, the skills, and the disciplinary tools needed for college, career, and civic life, which we talked about before with Francesca here, and that's where the document gets its name, the C3 Framework. It also provides guidance to states as they update their social studies standards, and districts and schools as they strengthen their social studies program. A very big idea, a big part of the C3 frameworks is something called the inquiry arc. And you can see up here, it's a 4-step process intended to frame the way students learn social studies. And it's designed to provide practice with the students as they know, argue, analyze, and explain their learning through inquiry. And whenever possible, educators should strive to include all 4 dimensions of the inquiry arc in student investigation. So taking a closer look at the inquiry arc, you can see that it's broken up into 4 dimensions. The first dimension, developing questions and planning inquiries. So students with teacher guidance in this dimension will develop compelling questions. Compelling questions are questions that are designed to an argument, to take a stand on a certain issue. And so with teachers, the students develop these questions and plan their inquiries. Moving on to dimension 2, the students investigate those questions through the different disciplinary lenses of civics, economics, geography, and history. Each grade has a primary discipline. In 3rd grade, it's, in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, it's history. In 6th grade, it's geography. And the others serve as supporting disciplines. But the students are working to investigate their compelling questions through those disciplines. The 3rd dimension is all about gathering and evaluating sources. And this is where we see a lot of tie-ins to our ELA curriculum. The students develop claims and use evidence to support those claims, which we really start the students doing in Gilead Hill School. I know that at Hebron Elementary School, students are introduced to literary essay, which is stating a claim and then building evidence around that. And they do it right up through the grades. In 5th and 6th grade, we have units around argument and advocacy. So there's a natural tie-in to our literacy work. And the 4th dimension is communicating and critiquing conclusions and taking action within the community. I think that's where the civic piece is really highlighted. But dimension 4 allows students to showcase and demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways. When I was a student, we showcased and demonstrated our learning through assessments, through tests. But students are encouraged to do that through PowerPoints or poetry or skits that they put on or projects within the community. So there's encouragement on the part of the students to showcase their learning in a lot of different ways. So once we had an understanding of the inquiry arc and the C3 frameworks, we were ready to take a closer look at the actual social studies standards. So we're going to go back to the beginning, back to kindergarten, and take a closer look at those standards. Do you want to go ahead one more? This one's fine.
Okay, perfect.
So just to give you an idea around the grade level frameworks and how they were designed and who had a part in them, they were designed at the Connecticut State Department of Education. Gathered elementary, middle school, high school, and even collegiate educators from urban, rural, and suburban districts. They played a part in designing these frameworks with the intention for it to be a resourceful guide for curriculum writers at the district level to really make it authentic to fit the needs within their community. As mentioned before, these frameworks are in alignment with the C3 National Social Studies Standards, and they're directly linked to the Connecticut Core Standards as well. Taking a deeper dive through this audit here at GHS, it was brought to light the current work that is happening and areas for growth as well. In terms of our grade levels K1 and 2, right now social studies is being explored through our resource of Scholastic News magazines. Students are presented with an opportunity weekly to engage in a weekly reader. They're asked to engage in reading of it. They're allowed to see videos, participate in discourse amongst their peers, and some of them even provide some extension activities. These weekly readers revolve around thematic topics, and they do touch upon social studies topics in a variety of ways, such as community, history figures, American government, American history, cultures, traditions, holidays, and so forth. The new frameworks clearly define learning for our students. In terms of kindergarten, the theme is me and my community. Students engage in the study of themselves and really gain an understanding of the role that they play within their various communities that they're a part of, starting with their families, then moving to the broader sense of the role that they play within their classroom community, then their school community, and eventually their town. They really take part in learning how to be an active participant within these communities. In terms of civics, also how to use citizenship skills and the importance that rules play in making those communities successful and kind and caring. Grade 1 builds upon that learning, whereas the frameworks outline a study of society and ourselves. Within grade 1, students really gain an understanding of deeper citizenship skills and responsibilities. They explore and they partner with community leaders and community people such as firemen and the roles that they play, police departments, local historians, and really getting an understanding of perspectives from the past and how their community came to be. In parts of geography as well, they study maps and events and how those played a part in shaping the town that they live in. Grade 2 builds upon that dimension 4 within the inquiry arc. Second grade students are really asked to engage upon the study of past and present and gain an understanding and develop the concept of how and why how and why individuals are deemed influential and historical. Through their understanding of various figures, they're going to engage in these rich texts of historical figures and really understand how these individuals came about in making a difference. This grade level is pretty touching and amazing. They're called upon to take action within their community. It calls for a lot of partnerships with community outreach programs where students are allowed to develop real-life solutions to problems that they see within their community. This ties nicely as well into our literacy units in terms of forming opinions, taking action, and truly seeing that they can make a difference. In terms of our dive within the audit, it did bring to light some future resources that are necessary to make this work successful. It will be important to establish community partnerships. The frameworks really call upon allocating localized and state history, for it's going to help our students really see a connection to the work that they're doing in the community that they're a part of. It's really going to call upon us here at Gilead to establish connection with our fire and local police personnel, as well as our local library and our local historical experts. In terms of grade 2, it's going to be important that we have for them rich text sets of these historical and influential figures for them to really gain an understanding of how they made an impact and a difference and how they can step forth and fill in those shoes. It's also important for us to take part in community outreach programs. It'll be important for us to determine practical, real-world community-based problems for our students to engage with developing solutions and finding that they can truly make a difference in making our world a better place. Another key element and resource for our school district will be in terms of developing a K-2 curricular team. It's going to be important for this curricular team to truly and dynamically integrate these new frameworks into the work that we're already doing. At Gilead Hill, these frameworks really lend themselves to a lot of our social emotional learning in terms of choosing love. Also our work with responsive classroom in these past years, as well as with our new health program. Our literacy units and the work within literacy allows our content to also be integrated into our reading and writing units. So it's this development of a curricular team will allow closely analyzing these frameworks and truly making sure that we're meeting the needs of our students and developing opportunities for them to engage in this work across the school day. Okay, and moving on to Hebron L, what you see up here is what the new standards call for. And what the audit uncovered at Hebron L is that we range from somewhat aligned to the standards to not aligned. All of the content is being taught, just maybe not at the accurate grade level. So in third grade, you can see we're called to teach or analyze the history and contemporary society of Connecticut and local towns. Currently, third grade teachers are teaching bodies of water, landforms, and indigenous people. So there definitely needs to be a bit of a shift there. In fourth grade, they're teaching U.S. geography as it relates to regional, cultural, economic, and political development of the United States. There's a minor shift in fourth grade They're currently teaching the regions of the United States and map skills and famous people from Connecticut, so that'll be a small shift. And echoing what Allie said at the Gilead level, these two grades especially, third grade especially, is going to involve partnering with the community, county, and using resources within our state. And then moving on to 5th and 6th grade, I'd say that 5th grade is our most closely aligned. This is almost to a T exactly what our 5th grade program involves right now. 6 to 8 was a little bit more complex because it involves two different schools. It's a 6 to 8 program. So we reached out to RAND. They've been very cooperative and helpful with us, asking them what themes and what content they teach so that we could kind of pick up the slack. And their message to us was the content and the themes weren't as paramount as making sure that the students come up with those skills, those analyzing, building the compelling questions, and doing that argument and advocacy work. Currently, our 6th grade teachers are teaching the standards directly. We have a wonderful new resource called the Tech Book and the Discovery platform from Discovery Education that's just provided resources that haven't previously been available. So it's been a wonderful resource that the 6th grade teachers have just started using. So moving forward, what I have up at the top there are the current resources. Currently, 3rd grade is using a textbook from 1994 that will no longer be relevant as we switch to teaching the new social studies standards. And again, we've got to curate local resources to support those standards. The Experience platform, which is a facet of the tech book that I told you about a few moments ago, 3rd grade teachers will have access to that. Even the CSDE website, the Connecticut State Department of Ed website, has a lot of resources available. And our own community has human resources that we can tap into as well. Grade 5 is actually also going to have access to that tech book and the resources that Discovery Education provides. And so moving forward, some of the work that we need to do is just to form teams at our school to explore those standards, get to know the inquiry arc on a deeper level, because all of the social studies work that we do, the inquiry arc will be a paramount part of that. So in conclusion, it was important to Julie and I to make sure that we have action steps and a timeline, and that our work together has helped us define these. So we really value the importance of establishing a vision and setting goals together for social studies within our district. We'd like to continue creating and incorporating the inquiry arc into lesson and unit planning at the grade level that we work with. We would also value the importance of continuing our study groups and our focus groups around analyzing the frameworks and really making sure that it's integrated across the curriculum and across the school day. When talking about our visions and goals, key elements stood out to us. We really value creating something that has continuity, sustainability, and most importantly, alignment to the frameworks and standards that have been set forth at the state level.
I want to echo a couple things that Julia and Ali said. One of the things that struck me as the thing between this work was the curricular connections and cross-program connections, and the part of the C3 framework is this idea of taking action, and we see that echoed within our Choose Law program. I know, Ellie, you mentioned that too, and we've seen some really nice cross-connection to our STEAM programming as well. Like when we did the Invention Convention last year, you might remember that we had way more projects to submit to the state competition. We had more national projects that went into the national competition. And a big component of that is that the invention incorporating how it's impacting and making life better for groups that need help. And so I really see a big connection between our Choose Love work and our STEAM programming, and now back to social studies as well. There's some nice back and forth with those programs. This is also going to lead to some budget impacts. So as we do this work, we're going to need resources to do this work. From materials, they spoke to that a bit. So we were able to use some Title IV funds, some grant funds to sort of kick off this work this year. And our plan is to, as we pilot resources and find them to be effective and want them for the long term, that those resources will have to be brought into our local budget, but we can continue to use the grant funds to be purchasing materials to pilot and try as we're making some of those curricular decisions over time. The other piece is just, that, there is a line in the budget for curriculum work. That work happens over the summer, but there's a lot of curriculum work that's called for in the district advancement plan. So investing those funds and having people and teams come in over the summer especially to do that work is important. And the power of these positions, like Julia and Allie's work has just been incredible this year. And we need Julia and Allie to be able to continue that work. And that's a financial commitment as well. So I just wanted to bring that to light as well. I know Julia and Allie are happy to answer questions you might have about social studies.
Joe Margaitis.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for spending the time in this. Great presentation. I love social studies. I love the fact you found a book that's almost 30 years old, so that's incredible. I remember going back in school and always have the list of all the kids who had it before, like in the book. I always look to see if you saw somebody. So.
Oh, yeah.
My question is in regard to grade 4. So it's supposed to be etiquette and local history, and right now we're teaching bodies of water. I think the transition's great. But what are we doing to ensure the children that are making that shift are not missing out on that content?
I'm sorry, you want to make sure the children aren't missing out on what content?
The content, so it's going to be etiquette and local history, right? That's going to be the focal point.
Right.
Right now we're focused on bodies of water with this book. So the kids today who are in 3rd grade who are going to 4th, they're not going to get that piece, right? That educational piece on the Connecticut and local history. So what are we doing to make sure that as they transition to 4th grade, they go right into U.S. geography? How do we make sure that they're not missing out on that piece?
That's a good question. Our 4th grade teachers have done some work with that, and I think that's one of the things that we'll have to tackle as we're moving forward. How do you fill in those deficits or those things that they had missed or that they hadn't been exposed to? And I think, with these compelling questions, if teachers are encouraged to help the students select questions or create questions that steer them in that direction, the inquiry allows for a lot of different learning to take place. So even though the standards call for the teaching of, in the 4th grade, it's the regions and the U.S. geography, I think there's latitude to infuse those things that were missed, especially localized history, that the students might be naturally engaging in, but it's something that we'll definitely have to keep in the back of our mind as we're moving forward.
Okay. Very good. I just want to make sure it's not missed. I love history too, so I just want to make sure everything's being covered if we can.
I think there'll be next steps that'll be, it was a very sort of soft goal we had this year, right? To audit, we've definitely taken steps beyond that, but the next step in the district advancement plan for social studies is going to be much more detailed and action oriented in terms of now what the outcomes of the audit have called for, right? So I think when we look at each year we'd update the district advancement plan, and the action step around social studies is going to be much more involved moving forward. But I'm really excited about it.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Allie Schmeisel.
I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. So I love that there was mention of, so there's the curriculum, and then it sounds like there were some videos sort of, woven into some of this, and I love that we're able to utilize more and more technology now for that. But I'm curious, in terms of, parents sort of being familiar with the curriculum, how might a parent go about learning more about the curriculum and or viewing some of those videos that their kids are going to see?
You're referring to the Discovery, the platform?
Yeah, I was earlier in the presentation, you were mentioning the videos.
Children will have access to that platform 24/7 whenever they have their Chromebook with them. So if parents wanted to access what their children see, they would certainly have the opportunity.
Oh, great.
To do
So
that.
all of the videos are in there. Oh, that's great. That's good to know.
It's a completely interactive platform.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing.
Awesome.
And Allie, I don't know if you were referencing also the videos that I mentioned about the Scholastic Weekly Readers here at Gilead. I do know, at least when we were participating in distance learning, those videos were available as resources to families, even those without a subscription. So that's something that we can look into and make sure that, I do believe that they had continued it. I can't promise that though. but they were available as just resources to families in terms of exploring some of these topics and keeping kids engaged.
Cool, thank you, thank you. And then it just so happens, this is amazing timing, I was at the train display over the weekend at the Old Town Hall, and the Hebron, the Historical Society was there, and we were all talking and chatting, and anyway, I learned, I didn't know, the Hebron Historical Society in the past would come in and teach the students about Hebron history, which is amazing, and I don't know if that's still happening, or if it's been on pause or what, but I'd love to know the status of that, because there was a lot of excitement, I can tell you, at the train display about it. And parents who were saying that they remember their children getting the presentation or whatever it was. And our town is so rich in local history, and we talk about community partnerships. I'd love to see, that reinvigorated, unless it's still in place. But I'm just curious about it.
So I know in the past, our students used to take walking tours of Hebron and go to different places downtown, but I agree with you, we have such a rich history, and we have so many community members that are so engaged in that history and willing to share it. So I do feel like it will be very easy to tap into those resources, especially in the K-2 and the 3 curriculum, for sure. We're going to rely heavily on that moving forward.
Yeah, I guess it used to be someone from the Historical Society used to come in and present. I'm not sure, is that?
So I don't know if our
accurate?
historian, Ms. Iriano, wants to speak to that.
Our second graders, when they go to the Hebron Harvest Fair, they usually, I know the Lions Club, when they do our tour, have somebody from the Historical Society do like that intro for our second graders. And then bringing in the Hebron Historical Society, have you done that since you were here? They used to go to HES, and that was, Allie, I was still teaching. I don't think we've done that in years and years.
Oh, okay.
And I do believe we also at times have brought in people, especially when, often what happens is if somebody's family has a connection, that's usually like it's an authentic sort of like.
Gotcha, okay.
Expert in this area, I'd love to come in and teach.
Oh, okay.
Knows about that, but that's something we've talked about is, even this year, the Historical Society has reached out to us to ask us to send flyers to some of those.
Oh, okay.
Events in town, so I definitely think that, relationship has sort of been rebuilt in the last couple months.
Oh, cool.
Especially here as we talk about, Hebron being one of the communities that our kids are a part of, we'll just continue to develop that partnership with them.
Neat.
And
thank you.
to Joe's point earlier, so the Hebron Harvest Fair, we haven't been able to do that field trip the last couple of years because of COVID. But we had talked to the Lions Club about when we can go back to doing field trips again. I know that they were interested to get the classes that weren't able to go at that time. So that's something that our team is hoping to be able to do.
Great.
Thank you.
I have one more, if that's
Oh,
okay.
sure.
Sorry. So, just because I love that how all these presentations, they all connect back to the district advancement plan. So it's fantastic, and I just love how it's playing out, the last few presentations that we've had. So we talked about the goal of, teaching an equity-focused, vertically aligned approach. I'm just curious, and this is really probably a broader question, how are we defining and measuring that we're being equity-focused?
So we haven't really done that work. So the last time the Student Growth Committee met, we talked about how are we going to develop some of these measurements. And actually, I was going to speak to it a little bit later in my report, but I can speak to it now if you want. And I remember Joe Zell spoke to this a little bit at the last board meeting. So one of the things that we had was a goal for us this year was to really define what summary data points and indicators of success might look like really throughout the district advancement plan. We had reached out to RAM a couple of different times and just finally received their portrait of the graduate and some of their school-wide rubrics. And so the student growth team wanted to really build off of that work, but with also knowing that there's a transition in the superintendency, we want to make sure that we're not going to be doing a bunch of work and then they might be going in a different direction or doing something different. And we've also been talking to Andover and Marlboro, who are also interested in partnering and doing some of this work together. So we, the subcommittee, felt that it would be a good idea to slow this work down a bit, see if we can do this work as a bigger partnership across the Region 8 partnership. And so for this year, we sort of created some new goals around this to really focus at Hebron Elementary to take those school-wide rubrics that RAM has to do two things. One, Mr. Larkin's going to work with his academic team to take those rubrics and really sort of translate them into like I can statements from like their current formation. And to also then the admin team is going to spend some time at our admin retreat this summer to do a crosswalk between our district advancement plan and the school-wide rubrics. By then, there'll be a new superintendent at RAM. The superintendents meet monthly, and so this is going to be a topic that'll be on our agenda as well. Because this work is heavy, it's intensive, and all of our students are going to be over at RAM. So we think it would be a good idea to do this work in partnership. So this is, like I spoke before, our social studies work I think is really accelerated to where we want it to be this year at this moment in time. I think that the work to define what these summary data points might be, I think is slowed down. So like, that's an area of, there's going to be some push and pull as we're kind of working through the district advancement plan. And I remember, one of the things we talked about with the plan from the very beginning is we didn't really set any artificial deadlines for our work. We have like what our work is for the year laid out. We also know that the work is going to evolve over the course of the year, and there can be other things that might come up that could either slow down the work or accelerate the work. And social studies is a great example of that work getting accelerated as the team, I think, was really invigorated by doing the work, uncovering some things in the audit, and feeling a sense of urgency to start addressing some of them faster than maybe the plan initially sort of alluded that we would do for this year. But that's kind of where we are with those summary data points, is taking a slow, deliberate approach.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? So I just had a couple, and I don't know if they're for you or you, or Mr. Ariano or Mr. Larkin, so I'll just throw it out there. So the first one is, in regard to what Mr. Margetta said, the realignment in 3 to 6. How, and I guess, how difficult is that going to be? Like, what is a time frame? How does that look? Like, what is the time frame of that kind of work? And then how are the current teachers in that position going to kind of realign their curriculum or learn the new curriculum that they're going to be teaching?
Well, I start by saying there has to be some realignment, but for the most part, I think we're on track in our grades. Like grade 5 is doing exactly what the standards are called to do. Grade 6, the same. 3rd grade a little bit, and 4th grade a little bit. So I think that's where the main focus of that shift that you're referring to needs to be. In terms of what that's going to look like or what the dates are for that, I would defer to what Dr. Baird said. A lot of that needs to be discovered. A lot of that needs to be discussed in building-based teams to make sure that, while Allie and I have done this work, in order to make sure that it's sustainable and there's continuity, we want to make sure we pull in our entire buildings teams. So while there is a sense of urgency, we also want to do it methodically and carefully so that the point that you brought up, Mr. Margaitis, doesn't get lost. What about these kids that might be missing this content? So I don't know if that exactly answers your question. It's something that we're very mindful of moving forward, but it might not be a question that we've answered yet.
I thought there would be more misalignment, to be honest, just because there hadn't been a lot of work done in social studies for a while. So I was actually pleasantly surprised at the audit that it didn't uncover more work that needed to be done in terms of some of the content shifts. But I do think that the pedagogical shifts that in terms of like how we're teaching kids and like the way we're going about instruction, I think that the new frameworks lend itself to the work we're already doing in English language arts specifically, but even taking an inquiry approach to our science work, our math work. I mean, it really is very similar. So, that's the other important component of it is going from a social studies experience. I'm not saying that this is what currently exists, but if we go back, Joe's going back to like looking at the names of the book for, 20 years ago, social studies was a lot of like, what are the dates, like memorization of facts, et cetera. This is, the new standards are really pushing us in a different direction. It's a claim that you have. Can you find evidence to justify your claim? And that really dovetails well with the other instructional work that we're doing. So I think in some ways we're ahead. I think in the teaching shifting ways we're ahead. It's more some of the content pieces that need to be updated. But we haven't had a lot of time. We've had one district level meeting to talk about social studies thus far. And we really wanted to give you all an update. So, I mean, there's more work for our team to do in the spring to really plot like what will be our future action steps and what would be our work for social studies for next year. I know that we've done some work to think about like, well, what are the financial implications of this work?
Right. That was my next question.
Budget for materials mostly. But then also thinking about like what teams would be in over the summer, because we also have competing work to be done in curriculum too. We want to look at really our STEAM program too. So it's really about how do we balance that, and you can only do so much so fast.
Okay. How much time do the kids get in social studies, like approximately, in K-2 and then 3 to 6? Like.
So in K-2, there's a little bit of difficulty in answering that just because the content is integrated throughout the school day. So I wouldn't say that social studies is really separate, its own separate entity we can really calculate the instructional minutes. And I think that's something that is also going to continue. I think when we really do the heavy lifting of integrating it and analyzing it and how it can really be dynamically woven into the school day, and into our Choose Love and our responsive classroom and whatnot, especially that community building and the frameworks for K-2, that might pose a difficult answer in terms of really giving you a clear cut, it's 30 minutes a day or 60 minutes a week. But that is work that we can look into.
I would say the same thing at Hebron Elementary School. We have ELA units, they do a unit, on colonial America. So that's part of our social studies. I think the only grade, Mr. Larkin, help me if I'm wrong, that we can truly pinpoint the amount of time is our grade 6 because that's departmentalized, and I believe it's 45 minutes for a class. But I would say that it's comparable in the other grades. But again, it's woven expertly by our teachers throughout different content areas throughout the day. It's not how it was years ago where you had X amount of time for science and social studies, put your books away, we're going to move on to reading now. Everything is so much more integrated and so much more purposeful now.
Okay.
The new standards have really been updated to reflect that too. Just like we sort of spoke about some of the themes that you see across really social studies, ELA, SEL, even math. I mean, like, they really are, the standards really lend themselves well to integrating across the content areas and lead to a richer experience.
And maybe just to emphasize that point, that the standards are broken down into categories. You've got the 4 disciplinary ones I mentioned, the civic standards, the economics, the geography, and history, but there's a huge component of inquiry standards. So while the content is very, very important, it's more the inquiry because we're not just teaching content, we're developing learning behaviors, students who can kind of direct their inquiry in a lot of different areas long after they leave us. So we're really developing those learner behaviors.
Okay, that's great. I really appreciate the vertical alignment, like you're looking into and reaching out to RAM, because I think that's really important. I think that's something in past years, like in different subjects, but I know that, the community has talked about that vertical alignment, and RAM has talked about that. So I appreciate that. In regard to the resources, first, I'm not surprised to see that 1994. I think I've seen a worksheet from 96, and it was, do we have to wait in regard to updating resources until you do a curriculum kind of overhaul? Or can some of these resources be purchased now to really update and be more appropriate for?
If I could speak to that a little bit. As I mentioned, we have this new program, or new resource, I should call it. It's called the Experience Platform, It goes along with the tech book that sixth grade has access to. But what the Experience platform is, it just offers resources from maps to videos to primary and secondary resources across the disciplines, and that includes SEL and physical education, geography. So that's a great resource that all of our teachers have access to, and that's just started December 1st. Our contract began, so we've already begun to pull. I think that was one of our biggest red flags, is we need to address our resource issue right away. And when I first looked into the Discovery Experience, it was a really big wish for next year, but through Dr. Barrett's help and some grant writing, we were able to get it in our hands of our teachers right away. So that piece is already being addressed.
So we're really utilizing a pretty hefty chunk of our Title IV grant to be able to really pilot some of these materials. We're not sure, we're going to try this. And we deliberately did not commit to a long-term license. We're going to try it. We're going to see how the kids respond to it. And really, it's a pilot, but it's not, because we're really having all of our kids in sixth grade utilize the resource. I'll just say for myself, this is anecdotal, but I walked into a social studies lesson a couple weeks ago. I went and found Mr. Larkin. I said, wow, there was a really great task the kids were engaged in. And just getting some better instructional materials in the hands of teachers can really begin some of those shifts faster. But the jury's out. We'll have to sort of see whether or not this is a resource we want to continue. It will be included in my budget for next year that we will continue with that platform. Because if not that, then something different. So there will be, that will be woven into the general fund budget, frankly. And then we're going to utilize really that same level of grant funding or similar amount from Title IV. We're going to reserve it for some K-2 materials. So, that's, we are thinking about budgeting for things that we don't yet know that we want. When we were launching in Norwich, the Global Studies School, that definitely had a strong humanities focus. That was 4 years ago. But there's a real lack of high quality social studies materials, at least there were 3 or 4 years ago when we were really looking. But what's great about national standards, what's great about these national frameworks is that publishers then see that there's going to be a demand for some higher quality materials. And now we're a few years away from when those standards were first launched. So we're starting to see some better things come on the market. We're also going to be doing, I'm going to be leading a professional development with the STEAM team and then replicating that with the 2 building academic teams around performance tasks, performance assessments. We're going to be doing that starting in January and continue in February. And the state purchased with some of their state level COVID funds, universal access for the whole state and this platform called Defined Learning. It used to be called Defined STEM, and it's really a great resource of performance tasks, performance assessments, which lead to this authentic problem-solving, claim inquiry work. And since I've been familiar with this program, they've begun to add social studies tasks as well. So that'll be something that Julia and Allie are going to learn more about. They'll be able to then bring that back to their team. It's another really high quality resource that luckily we actually have access to for free. But that free will go away at some point. I think the license was for this academic year and next academic year. And then if we want to continue that, we'd have to then factor it into our own local budget, would be my guess. But actually I was very encouraged because the state, I know that material to be at a very high level. There's a new chief academic officer for the state, and I was thrilled to hear that that was one of the 2 learning tools that they purchased. So we're taking time to learn these, taking time to really unpack the standards, take a slow, deliberate approach, but there is going to be a need for some higher quality materials and some updated materials.
That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate all your work. I know it's a lot of intensive work and hard work on top of what you do every day, so I really appreciate it. This is important work.
Thank you.
Allie and Julia, thank you so much for coming
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, Superintendent's report.
All right, I will try to be brief. I did already share a lot of my update because I wanted to speak to those academic indicators, not just academic indicators, but the indicators of success and the district advancement plan. So I already talked about that. So I'm just going to highlight a couple other things from my report under district advancement plan update, really around the last two bullets. We're going to be talking a little bit later tonight around the capital projects that we are going to be sending to the town and ask you to just look at our prioritization. So we'll be talking a little bit about that more tonight. But obviously, there's been a lot of budget work going on. We have Jay Beret, our new facilities director here. So he'll be at the table in a little bit to talk about some of that work and the capital projects. I will be presenting what I would be proposing for what a world language expansion would look like over 2 years. And we do the budget presentation on January 6th, so you can look forward to that. Moving into COVID operations, I just wanted to note, people are probably aware, I did forward to the board last Friday, as I typically would, the Chatham Health weekly COVID report. So the town is experiencing an increase of cases. That's happening across the state, but we are currently at the red alert level. We have seen more cases in the last 4 to 5 days, specifically at Hebron Elementary School. Right now, we have 7 students isolating at Hebron Elementary, along with 1 staff member. It is really different than what we saw at the beginning of the school year at Gilead, so I just want to be really clear about that. We're not seeing evidence of in-school transmission. We're seeing cases across, in different grades or different classes. What we saw at the beginning of the school year at Gilead was very localized, and it was in mostly in the same classrooms, and was really limited to kindergarten and preschool, and really started, with the prep program, and we saw some in-school transmission. So what we're seeing at Hebron now is the opposite of that right now. But we'll continue to look at that very, very closely, as I know you know. We'll be sending out our updated COVID operations plan in a couple of weeks. We're pretty close to having that finalized. We really focused on streamlining and making the document easier and more concise, to read. It'll include the updated quarantine protocols around screen and stay, and the testing out of quarantine. All right, getting into some other items, I just want to draw your attention to the policies that I updated using the model policy updates from our attorney. Those were emailed to you previously. We have several policies up for second read and for consideration for adoption later tonight. This really represents the conclusion of the policy audit that was done in 2020. So there's been a lot of work in policy over the last year and a half, and tonight potentially is the conclusion of that major work that we did. Just to put some things on your radar, we had our professional development educator evaluation committee meeting on November 10th. One of the things that we discussed is the Connecticut Department of Education is currently looking at recommendations for updates to and modifications to state statutes regarding educator evaluation. I mention that because it may not be something that the board thinks a lot about, educator evaluation, but it is time consuming. It's a lot of work at the building level. And should there be updates, which I think that I'll speak on behalf of the admin team and probably all of our teachers as well. We would welcome some changes in the educator evaluation system. But I mention it because there would be major professional development implications potentially if there were changes. And that takes time, and will take place of other initiatives that we may need to do in terms of professional development with staff. So I just want to make sure that's on your radar. The Safety and Security Committee met on November 30th. We discussed our training and our work up to date to implement some new protocols for active threats to schools. That training is ongoing throughout this school year. The facilities team is also under Jay and Caitlin, has developed a help desk ticket type system for staff to report facility concerns, very similar to like what we would have in the IT department. And that's been launched and items are coming in. I know I emailed this out, but I wanted to just bring back to your attention that I did talk to the town manager and communicated to the Parks and Rec department. As you know, at the last board meeting, and for new members, we're going to need 2 additional classrooms here next year for first grade. We have a large increase in enrollment, specifically in kindergarten, and they're going to be moving up to first grade next year. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of easing in kindergarten, so we're going to need 2 additional classrooms next year. And we needed an additional classroom this year, so we're 3 classrooms up from where we were 2 years ago. And so we're going to need to utilize the rooms that prep currently utilizes. So I've communicated that to the town. There's some options that we put on the table for them. We value prep. We'd like to see them continue in using our facilities. We think that makes it very easy for families. We continue to want them to use our space. So cafeteria could be an option, activity room could be an option. The gym can be an option. I've seen that work well in other districts and other towns, including where I'm a parent. So those can be spaces that prep could use. And of course, our playscapes, our outside spaces as well. But we do need those classrooms back as classrooms. So we've offered to meet with them and to work with them to help in any of that transition. If the town were so inclined, they could purchase a storage unit. One classroom we currently use for storage, which we need. We need to have some storage capacity within the building. So if the town were to purchase a storage unit, we could move some things to storage and we could potentially free up a room. But I really see that as something that the town would do. Prep is a town program. I don't think that you would purchase a storage unit to make room for a prep space. It'll become your budget soon though, so you could always go in a different direction. But that's how I sort of viewed that. A couple other things. As you know, we are having a transition in our SRO program, and we welcomed Officer Topoulos to working with us last week. We started with a meeting with both officers, the admin team, and the resident trooper together to sort of plan out what that December transition would look like. And both officers are working together here with us this month. I wanted to mention that as part of AHM's Here For You campaign, so this is some grant money that they received to do some training on other things. And Al, you might be able to speak to this a little bit too. But Dr. Briere and our HES nurse, Mr. Driscoll, are going to become QPR trainers. They're going to be doing training in January to be able to do that. You do that in teams, so there'll be a team. Once certified, they'll begin offering QPR training to our staff, so we're excited about that. And now I didn't know if you had any more information.
I just think it's awesome. If anyone has not heard of QPR, it's Question, Persuade, Refer. It's the Suicide Prevention Gatekeeper Training. And it's a wonderful, to have a train the trainer opportunity locally is great. To have capacity inside the school is awesome. It's a best practice. And so I'm just so excited that it's going to be under our roof. So thank you so much for doing it, because it's huge.
I agree. Yeah. And then I want to talk a little bit about our Region 8 Insurance Consortium. This is not something we've talked a lot about with the board. This was set up several years ago. It's the group consists of Andover, Marlborough, Hebron, the towns, the Board of Ed, the Regional Board of Ed, and AHM to share in the cost and the planning of health and dental care. And it's saved considerable amounts of money to each entity since its establishment. Traditionally at this time of year, we set a renewal rate, and then we usually see that rate decline over the budget planning process. I think we landed at 1.4 last year, but we started maybe at 3 point something. This year, our plan is running so well and our reserves are in very healthy shape. So we set an initial rate of a 0% increase for this year. So I guess there's good and bad with that. Like, it's great. Like, we're going to be already out of the get-go saying that we don't anticipate any increase in our health and dental insurance rates for next year, which is great for our budget and great for our staff that are paying their share of the premiums, right? But we don't get that sort of like psychological effect of seeing that number go down through the budget process, I suppose. So I wanted to expand on what I initially put on my report a little bit. The group, I'm the vice chair of that group. There's a board of directors that oversees the health insurance consortium, is working to develop a reserved fund policy. So we've begun drafting that. We have about $4 million in reserves, which is a really healthy amount of money that's been built up over time, which was always the plan since the formation of that consortium. It really helps us stabilize the rates. That's part of why we can feel very confident right now to go in with a 0%. So I'm working with the committee drafting that policy, because I love policy, so of course I would be, right? So I'll share more information as it's developed. The way that it works is there's a board of directors, and I'm one of those members. They'll have, each entity has a board member on the group. RAM does have a double vote because they have over a third of the cost associated with the group. So by the way that it was set up, they have 2 votes. It's a very nice group to work with, I've got to say. But when we establish that policy, the way that the bylaws work is we would need to bring it back to each entity for approval. So I'll keep you updated as we develop that policy. But what we don't want is to, it's pretty conservatively run, I'll say. Like, that's part of why we've been able to get up to a $4 million reserve. But if we continue in the fashion that we've been, we'll just continue to grow money, and there's not a reason for that. We also don't want to drastically cut rates and then have to drastically increase rates. So there's a balance to all that work. So we want to establish a policy that will really guide how much we would keep in reserve so we don't have too much and we don't have too little. And like I said, I'll keep you updated. It's a good problem to have that our rates have just, really it's because our healthcare has been not underutilized, but it's been utilized less over the COVID years, we think. So our claims rate has been very low, but at the same time, we've just been able to negotiate good rates at the same time. And so that's why it's sort of built up to a nice level. So again, good problem to have. That's it.
Wonderful. Any questions?
I have a question.
Ali Schmeisel?
Thank you. So for the updated COVID operations and distance learning plan that has to be updated every 6 months, I cannot remember. Does that require, when that submission happens, if you will, does that require any documentation or anything that says that the community had feedback into that, or that parents had feedback into it, or anything like that?
There's not a requirement. I mean, so there was a requirement when the act first came into play last May or June. There was a requirement to have stakeholder feedback at that time, which we did. And then we've reiterated in our communication that we will take feedback at any time, and that's in the plan itself. People can email feedback. They can come speak a public comment here. I mean, this, like I said, this iteration of the plan doesn't really have any changes to operations or anything like that. It really is just, it'll look cleaner and shorter because there were a lot of redundant sections, because when the first time we had to do the plan, back when our current Secretary of Education was our commissioner, there were many components you had to include. Yeah. There's not any rules about that anymore, but your plan has to reflect, what the current guidelines are, et cetera. So really what we've done is we've pared down a lot of the wording, cut out redundant wording, really just referenced state documents. So that way, when those documents are updated, it doesn't call for us to put out a whole new plan. Mm-hmm. So that's the work that's been done. We did keep in the we did keep in the statement about wanting to continue to get public feedback and how to do that. That's still within the plan.
And then what's kind of, and I'm not sure how connected this is, but sort of what's the word on the street about additional ESSER dollars or ESSER funds or kind of what, because I'm hearing that there might be more funding, and do you mind explaining that to us?
I can, but I would defer to Dr. Briere and Ms. O'Leary. It's going to be under their report to speak to.
Okay.
Is it really around special education funding at this point?
Okay.
I don't anticipate other funds beyond that. I think that it's going to be special ed funds and/or funds around like air conditioning and like things of that nature. I'm not aware of any other money that's going to come that's just for sort of general purpose.
Yeah. And then just a point about the prep program, if that's okay. So just having, a few years ago, navigating all of that, I just want to throw it out there. So, and I think everybody's aware, but I just want to say it out loud. One of the interesting things about the prep program for working families is that obviously those little kids cannot get on the bus, right? So without the prep program being on site for before and after care, we would create an access issue to our wonderful preschool for working families. So I just want to throw that out there so that we're transparent about it. Because unless you've kind of lived through that, right, you wouldn't really know that. And so I just want to make sure that we're very well aware of that, that I don't feel that we would want to create an access issue to our amazing preschool program because a program was no longer on site. So for working families, that is the only option. They can't get on the bus, they can't go to Christ Lutheran or elsewhere. So I just want to point that out.
I completely agree, which is why, we're saying
Yeah.
we're happy to help in any way that we can.
Because we have other space, we have big space, which actually probably would be better, at least at this point.
And the other thing to remember is that we need these rooms for next school year, but the year after that, the way the projections look, we would need one less classroom here the year after that. So this could be a 1-year challenge for at least one classroom.
I do have one question. Talking about, with the prep and needing the extra classrooms, I know last month we had talked about, needing classroom materials. And right now we're borrowing desks from Andover as we're putting our budget together, because I don't, and I'm sure Andover would agree, they're not going to get a huge influx of students. Is it possible for us to reach out and purchase desks at a cheaper price from them as opposed to going and purchasing them, retail?
We are very excited to get those desks back, and I'm going to tell you why. Because come the spring, when case rates go back down, we're looking forward to bringing back our tables and having our kids go back to doing more like group work, sitting together. If the rates weren't what they are right now, I think that we would be moving in that direction now. I think there's a strong desire to it's cliche to say get back to normal. There's a strong desire for that. And so when we created the budget for next year, we need furniture for first grade. We're not proposing desks, we're proposing tables, because that collaboration work is so essential to the inquiry model that we're trying to build in our social studies.
Is it possible to see if Andover has tables? Just because they don't have as many students as once they did.
Yeah,
We're trying to save money.
We certainly could. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
To Amanda's point, maybe it's not Andover, maybe it's another school district.
I'm just thinking them because we
As
get
it-
borrowed from
Yeah, as the state population drops, it probably is the districts have tables.
Yeah, I've got my EastCon superintendent's meeting next Monday, and I can throw it out to the group.
That would be great, thank you.
Great idea.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Amanda Venezia.
I'm trying to, you guys are already talking budget, so why can't
I'm calling your name.
Every year, we're always budget.
I'm just seeing that. Caitlin O'Leary, Business Manager Report.
My first section here is my technology update. I did remove a bullet that's been on here for a little bit about some ARP funded updates to our AV equipment, but you see in front of you some new microphones and this lovely box back here that I'm sure Dave would like to tell you more about, but it is in, and we've started. So what you're going to experience for an upgrade today is that those viewers at home that are watching over Zoom or watching afterwards on our link on our website are going to be able to hear each of us individually better, and eventually we'll be able to get it to a point where anybody that's here in our audience would be able to hear a little bit better through some amplification here. So we're excited to have that moving forward there. The other piece I reported to you last month was that we received an FCC emergency connectivity grant to provide some internet access to families in need and some access to devices, so some iPads and some Chromebooks. So we have drafted our communication to families with a survey for those families to fill out to express need for those devices. That will go out electronically on Friday, but obviously because of the nature of the ask for families, we're also going to be sending it home in paper form. So that's going to be going home as soon as possible. So the draft has gone out to the schools, so they'll, copy and send to the teachers and send home from there. So once the forms start coming back in, we'll be able to, distribute as funds are available to those families in our community in the amount of about $45,000 worth of resources. So that was a great win for the community. As far as this facilities update is concerned, our big work this past month has been preparing our capital improvement budget. And I know you see here in your report that there was $1.9 million, but that was before the bulk of our quotes were actually in. So it didn't include a huge piece of air conditioning upgrades and then some energy management system and heat recovery units that came in about $600,000 higher than it was quoted many years ago when it became part of the CIP budget before. So at this time, I think you have a revised CIP cover sheet in front of you, and we're looking at a total of about $4.9 million over the next 4 years. So we have Jay Bourret here, right behind me. I've said his name many times in the past 3 months of him being here, but he's offered to come and speak to any of this today. He's been really key member, and of course, working with our contractors to get some quotes and helping us to work on prioritizing some of the items over the several years. So we wanted to present this to you, and I'll pause here to see if you have any questions about priority levels or any of the items there.
So this spreadsheet is what Caitlin's referring to. You see that it adds up all the way to the right to 4.9 million, which is a lot more than what our CIP requests have been in years prior. But this has been part of our work to really take a more comprehensive look at our facilities and to map out needs. I'll just speak a little bit to the prioritization. This originally came to me, Rachel brought it to me and said, how shall we prioritize these? And I went to the town COVID fund letter that went through the board last spring, I want to say, where the board weighed in on the prioritization of those items. But the way that the CIP request goes in, some of those things that we had grouped together have to be submitted broken apart. So I did my best to sort of mirror that, but then also group things that sort of seem like they should go together. So this has to be submitted to the town, and we really want to make sure we're submitting what the board reflects as the priorities in the different years and in the order up and down throughout that year as well. So for example, in the first year, if you're feeling like the playscape at Gilead Hill, the additional playscape, which we've talked about extensively within the preschool expansion discussions, but it also would be very desirable even if we didn't expand preschool. So that was a pretty high priority when the board last discussed it. But you might decide tonight, and I just randomly grabbed that one because it was the bottom of the list, not because I have any feelings about the playscape personally, but you might decide, you know what, that's more important to us than the roofs. Or, you know what, I think we should wait, and that should be something that we prioritize in the next year, the 23-24 year. So we really wanted to bring that to the full group and get your input before we submit it to the town.
Madam Chair.
Amanda Venezia.
So, question about the glass brick walls. So we passed that last month, and we had all saw it was we were going to our meeting. Can that really hold off 4 years? Like, is that not going to break and cause, well, a safety issue if it breaks, but also cool air coming in? Well, is that something that we can hold off 4 years on?
So I had that same question, so it's a good question.
And then my other question, just so I have it out, just personal feeling, I think a generator to back up for food storage, I mean, we've had this conversation before, how important that generator would be. I just think that would take priority over a playscape.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion. I want the playscape, but I do feel a generator is very important.
Heather?
Joe Margolis.
I mean, I agree that generator is really important. I believe right now, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the generator that is in place is for food storage, but that's really it.
Yep.
So the concept is this would get us a generator for the building itself, which is important.
And I'll just say this, the generator, we only have one here at Gilead. So we'd have to move the food from, we've moved the food from Hebron L to Gilead to put it in where we have the backup generator. And this is something we had talked about as a team too. This is a little bit of a random selection for this reason. It was submitted in a grant and we don't know the status of the grant. So that was another reason why we just sort of flopped in this particular year, but.
That makes sense then.
I could see Caitlin's hand go up there.
Caitlin.
So I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that this is the generator for Hebron Elementary School. So we do have a generator here at Gilead Hill. Like you said, that is, it's bringing power to the freezer and, to some of the other essential features here, but this one's specifically for Hebron L. That's all, but I think you mentioned that. Jay, did you want to talk at all to the prioritization of the glass brick walls?
Yeah, the glass brick walls kind of going to be kind of an extensive project anyway. If you look at that wall, it's a big opening, so if we're going to take all that out, it's getting structural engineering, making sure that it's still supportive to put different windows in. There were some other options. We looked at doing some different stuff, just putting bricks on the lower part so those lower ones wouldn't get broken again. There are some fixes we could do temporarily if we had to. We could get, panels to cover them. Some can be replaced. There is some stuff, if we really had ones that were really bad, some of them can be pulled out. It's like mortared in and pulled out and replaced. So there are some other options. We can extend that a little bit, I think.
Ali Schmeisel.
And is it kind of an all or none type of thing, like the walls and the interior in there? Those are the ones that we saw on the way to the meeting, right, last month?
Yeah, I think you're going to continue to see.
Some everywhere.
Yeah, you're going to continue to see problems like at both schools over time. And so the way it's been explained to me is that they were not installed correctly. So there should have been silicone in certain area after a certain number of bricks that they have room to sort of like expand and contract a little bit. So the ones that are in rough shape, like cracked, and we can take those out, put replacements in the meantime, but you're going to do that forever. And it's not a long-term solution.
And you're never going to find identical bricks. So over time, the more we're replacing over time, it's just going to look like a repair. The best we can do, it's going to look great.
They're not still making those bricks?
What do you mean?
The other thing too is like we've been saying to the town building committee, we really think a comprehensive facility study needs to be done. You know, we have a lot of individual projects here, and some of them are grouped together. You know, the HVAC stuff is all grouped together and next year. But the reality is, like, you know, some of these would be eligible for state reimbursement, some of them may not. But if you're doing a large scale, like renovate as new type project, then that project could go for state reimbursement. So I do think, you know, what you see in, you know, next year and the year after are things that we feel like have been identified as the board previously as priorities, right? That, like, maybe we don't want to wait for a facility study to get some of this stuff going. But I do think in the next year or two, if the town doesn't do a facility study in the next year, I think it would be beneficial to the board to decide to do it yourself, because I think that that would be a better solution to look at the building more comprehensively as maybe a bigger project to do a lot of things at the same time and perhaps get more state reimbursement for it. That's my opinion.
So, Miranda, anything?
So just to confirm, safety-wise, these bricks are fine because we can just, like you said, pull them out, put something else in. So it truly can wait 4 years because it will be safe for our students.
Yeah, catastrophe thing, yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that's good. But I just want to, because we did speak about the generator, that there is one here. I really do think we need to move up the generator, like to now, as opposed to the playscape, because if we're moving food, is there always going to, I just think it's smart to have one at both schools.
Oh my God.
So Amanda, the reason we're doing that is that we may get reimbursed through the state.
No, I do, like, I understand, but Tom, what is your, like, how long until you think we're going to hear that?
To be honest, like, it's a grant that the town put in, and so I have no idea. I mean, it was something that Andy had worked on with Mal, with Senator Austin, and Representative Courtney's office to submit. I would have thought we would have known by now. But there's other grants that we put in that our own grants that we thought we would have known months ago. A lot of these facility things at the state are just like really backed up. I think that this grant is actually a federal grant, but I may be wrong about that. But I mean, Kaylin has put some stories about the safety security grant. I mean, it's unbelievable how late that is. Kaylin, do you want to speak to that at all? Like, just like the response you've been getting? Like,
oh, yeah. So around the safety and security grant, I did reach out for an update this past month. And, you know, the update is that there really is no update. There's been some turnover in that department at the state. There have been multiple natural disasters that they've been attending to. And they just want to make sure that they're doing a really thorough job reviewing all of the asks that have come in, and they're providing appropriate, accurate feedback to all of the towns that have put in requests. So they don't really know when they'll be able to update us. So we wait.
but it is totally up to the board what order you put any of these things in.
Thank you, Matthews.
For my own understanding, what is changing with the parking at AGS? Is it expanding or resurfacing?
Yeah, so it seems that I've only been here when we've been sort of in the midst of this pandemic, so there haven't been community events happening, but from what I've learned is that over time, like mostly when community events are happening or evening family events are happening, it's just there's not enough parking to accommodate the number of people who arrive. There tends to be a lot of parking like along the side of the street, which is unsafe, you know, as people are driving. I mean, that's just like state route. People are driving fairly quickly down that street. It gets muddy in certain, you know, in the spring and the late fall. And so the idea is just to, you know, expand parking here to be able to accommodate those sort of events.
Oh my God.
It's also a safety issue. So there's a lot of kids. So when you park anytime there's an event, they're parking on the road.
Yeah, no,
which is not good for the grass, but there's kids walking out there and you can't
And it's dark.
see. So the concept is we want to expand parking further out, so people are not like backing up or parking where they shouldn't be parking.
That makes perfect sense.
Something else is that the curb didn't used to be there, is my understanding. So people could have sort of like parked a little bit on the shoulder there. But now there's a very defined curb that you're not going to drive over. So that, I think, remember when Keith and Joe sort of first brought this up, that was something you guys talked about as well. I will say, the church has since bought the lot next to the baseball field with the idea that they need more parking. And when I talked, the pastor there is on the Hunger Action Team. And so he reached out and said, once that comes to fruition, whenever that is for them, they're happy for us to use their parking lot and want to collaborate with us on a greenhouse. I don't think it should preclude us also expanding the parking lot, but I think that's information to share.
Sorry, just one more thought. I do like the pavilion idea for this year. With everything going on, it'd be great to be able to get, do outside teaching. And right now, if there's even a drizzle or anything, you do have to bring the students in. So I think a pavilion for learning outside and just being outside in general would be a great thing to have.
That's a great example. Sorry, I don't mean to keep on adding on to here, but that's a great example. The parking lot, the pavilion, and the removal of the portable, that was all lumped originally. The board lumped that all together as a project. We have to submit it separately. So this is, that again, might be an area where you might say, well, we want portable out of there, but we could wait a year for the pavilion or parking lot or something like that. The way that we submit it, you can now sort of break these into different years or different priorities. So
Heather Pettit. Dr. Baird, can we speak to, so that this is our capital improvement ask.
Yeah.
But the town also received a lot more money than we did in regard to COVID money, and they're allowed to use it for the schools. Have you had any recent discussions on more of what the town is looking to do with those funds? And I'm just wondering if they can actually be utilized to get some of these projects done in a more timely manner.
I talked to the town manager, if not monthly, at least every other month. And every time I talk to the town manager, I ask for an update around the town COVID funding. So the town is getting, my understanding is $2 million total, $1 million this year, $1 million next year. And what the town manager shared with me is that his suggestion to the Board of Selectmen is that it would be beneficial to have a subcommittee with with members of the Board of Selectmen, members of the Board of Finance, members of the Board of Ed, to work together to decide how to utilize that funding. He's always included the Board of Ed when he's talked to me about that. And so he's shared that there are competing priorities. There are some other things that the town would like to do as well. But every time he's talked to me, he's also said that has been very supportive of the idea of working on our HVAC system specifically. Part of that is he's very confident that that funding can be used towards the upgrades to the HVAC system. And it's brought up the air handlers, and town manager specifically wanted to go out and get some preliminary air conditioning quotes. So that, really, this is very driven by the conversations we've had with the town manager and his work to have people come out and work with us to get these quotes. So I feel that it's a big number, but we've also been in the Board of Finance meetings where they've talked about how there's a need to do a lot of capital work in the town, and the schools are certainly no exception to that.
And this request is supposed to be a comprehensive request of all of our asks. So they don't want us to go in with any assumptions that this is going to be funded with this grant and that's going to be funded with that grant. They want everything together in one place, and then it's their team's job to take a look at local funds, federal funds, state COVID funds, whatever it is, and sort of prioritize the funds. But that is with the thought that there are some of these COVID funds immediately available. That is why we put some of these asks next year and the year after, thinking, hopefully we could utilize some of that funding for some of these items here.
Thank you. Dr. Baird, do you mind asking Mr. Tierney, where that grant lies? What is this due to the town?
It's past due. We haven't been able to submit it because we're waiting for quotes, which we got yesterday, I think. So we were going to submit it and then with the note that the Board of Ed is going to discuss it, we may have some revisions to the priority order. At this point, we were going to submit it today, and my feedback was, let's just submit it tomorrow morning. So this is due, we do need to get it in. I mean, in terms of the grant, like, no matter what year you put it in, I mean, in terms of the generator, again, like, the town is going to have to decide, like, well, they know that's been put in for a grant. So they're not going to necessarily put it in to any year until they know the status of that grant. Arbitrary where the generator goes. That's just my opinion. I don't see them funding it until they know about the grant. And if it gets funded, they're just going to do it.
They mostly care about, if you're looking at the far left column, like what is our priority level? Which year it falls in is really up to them, but Amanda, you were saying perhaps the generator over the playscape, like that's where we can change those priority numbers. Like you said, Dr. Baird, sort of put the years out there as a sort of goalpost for them, but.
I mean, our recommendation would be that the roofs need to happen this year because they're in motion. So those things are sort of like locked in. If you look at the 23-24 grouping, they're not going to get done this year, we don't think. Like there's committees that have to get established. Like it just seems unlikely that that would happen this year. Roofs are going to happen this year, HVAC probably next year. Those would be like the two big things that are sort of happening. So I don't see a lot of, correct me if you disagree, but like that's kind of like has been our thought process for those pieces. So I feel like I have more discretion around the portable, the pavilion, the parking, the playscape, the glass brick walls, I guess. Like I kind of feel like that's probably where you have some more leeway. I hear what you're saying about the playscape. We also just have more students and more classes here next year. So that's just another consideration. You're going to have 2 more first grade classes next year that would utilize another playscape if it was put in.
So Heather Pettit, that's the pre-K one we're talking about, replacing?
No, pre-K would stay as is. I'm looking at Mrs. Uriano, but what we basically talked about is installing a playscape sort of outside of the pre-K rooms, sort of over near where Mr. Lapsus's room is, sort of like in the back there, having some walkways, that sort of like walk by central office, extend past Dr. Brier's office, sort of that way. So you could access it from the front of the building, but obviously you'd be able to access it from the back where Mr. Lapsus's classroom is. So it most likely would be like another kindergarten, preschool level playground to take some of the pressure off of the existing pre-K playground space. Did I summarize that?
Yes, and it would take pressure off of this with the 2 additional first grades.
Okay. It would be wonderful, just my personal opinion, if we expanded pre-K. We'd have that playscape.
It would already be done. Yeah, of expanding preschool later if the board moved in that direction.
Okay. So are we, Joe Margolis?
Thank you. Just we're going to keep moving forward as a 2A. We should move parking 2C up and likely move to pavilion 2B down, just because once you take that portable out, there's probably something underneath where the portable was that may have to be dealt with at that point. So whether it's absolutely, I don't know what that's going to look like.
Right.
But that might be the best time because it's in the same vicinity of what we're looking to do. Just my thought.
I agree with that. Because there's no point putting a pavilion over something we're going to have to pave later on.
I don't disagree.
And does the board feel okay with that? Okay.
I agree.
All right. So let's move those, switch those. All right. Are we okay with leaving the backup generator for HES for now in that year, given the grant ask?
I think it makes sense.
Asking the board. Okay. All right, I think that's it, just that switch for now.
I feel so excited that we have air conditioning and our capital improvement request.
Next year, but I knew it wasn't possible given the amount of work it's going to be, so. All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming, Jay. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the next section of my report is around transportation. I reached out to DATCO around some of their recruitment efforts since our last meeting. I had mentioned that they had hired a recruitment team and were going to start targeting some recruitment efforts specific to Hebron. So I've listed in my report some of the feedback that they gave me around some of the specific items that they're doing. One is a upcoming direct mail campaign that's going out in January. Some of their sign-on bonuses, just making sure that they're, within days following up on any applications that come in. But I don't have any, there's no updates, unfortunately, on anybody in the pipeline as far as drivers are concerned at this point. Our bus runs are, we have a few less buses running on an average day than last month. The average buses per day is 11.6, down from 11.8 last month, but we are clearing 3 minutes earlier. So
That's up late, clearing much earlier.
Yeah, yep, this past week they've been really good. So that's a celebration. Next section, you've got your student activities account reports included. The highlight there is we got a large donation from the Hebron Education Foundation in the amounts of a little over $6,000 for Gilead Hill and $15,000 for Hebron Elementary. So they're going to focus some of those donations around beginning to build their makerspace room. So we thank the Hebron Education Foundation for those donations and are excited to be able to provide some updates next on some of our progress around that work. As far as food services is concerned, our reimbursements are looking really healthy compared to our expenditures each month. You see sort of like a double reimbursement last month. That's just because September and October both hit within the same month. But we're looking great as far as the finances are concerned. The supply chain still is an issue, and we're doing what we can as far as substituting in meal options as needed when the food deliveries happen. But Ruth's been doing a good job to sort of schedule her deliveries to give a couple days leeway, and has been able to make things work. So, we thank her for her work around that. In the preschool section, you'll see the preschool financial report there is, we're showing that we're a little over budget compared to what we're looking to take in as far as tuition. Right now we have 3 open half-day preschool spaces. So if that continues throughout the year, we will be in a deficit. So I'm going to be processing a tweak to payroll so that when you see this report next month, you won't see us being over budget projected here. So those overages and tuition will be absorbed by the general fund. So we just make sure that we're allocating that money if needed. And we'll just keep an eye on it throughout the year and make adjustments if we need to. As far as the grants are concerned, I already spoke to the security grant. But the other, I lost my, hold on. I lost the next page, thank you. I had notes though that I needed. The other updates, you were asking about updates around some of the ARP and ESSER funding. So we have our ARP IDEA grant, which has been submitted since the writing of this report. So that grant is going to focus on offsetting the cost of a part of a paraeducator for next year, providing some tutoring services for an identified student needing some extra supports, and some classroom supplies for our preschool program. Our ESSER 2 IDEA grant has been submitted and approved, and that's going to support some of our some expansion of our speech and language pathology services. So we've identified some additional needs there this year. So we're going to target some funds there, and additionally build another sensory room. So we'll be able to buy some resources there. And that grant was broken down into 3 different sections. The third section of that was based on like a per pupil allocation of $650 for students with dyslexia. So we got a very small pot of money related to that, but that's going to give some staff hours to one of our special education teachers. Our speech and language pathologist, who's going to work on building some curriculum resources to support students with dyslexia. So to make sure that they're able to, get differentiated supports throughout the curriculum. And then the final one is the FRC grant, which we actually, right here it says we're building it. We submitted that yesterday. So the FRC grant is going to provide some additional hours for coordination of our mentor program, some additional outreach to families to really be able to bring some awareness to what our FRC program has to offer, and offer some parent and student shared enrichment activities starting in January. So we're excited about all those.
Let me just expand on that a little bit. So for people who are not familiar, FRC is our Family Resource Center. We partner with AHM. So AHM provides our programming for the Family Resource Center and the staffing for that. One of the things that the board communications committee discussed was having some more activities for families, some more evening events where families could come in and just do some enrichment type work. So that was part of the reason, that was part of our ask to them, is that they write that into this grant. And then, Dr. Bear, could you speak to some of this COVID special ed?
Yeah, absolutely. Someone was asking about special ed funding. So it's been a really unique year for the amount of special ed funding, because typically we have 2 special ed grants each year, 611 and 619. And these aren't all vast amounts of money. So across 4 funding sources, they range from $650 to $30,000. So 2 of them are $30,000. One is $650, and then the middle one is right in the middle there. So meeting with special ed teams, speech and language pathologists, related service providers, looking at the landscape of where we are, we came up with a plan that Mrs. O'Leary outlined. So we're excited. You may remember a few years ago, we were fortunate to have a $6,000 special ed stipend, and we put a multi-sensory learning space at Gilead Hill School. We think it's time to do that at Hebron Elementary School. The speech and language needs across the district are growing, so it's fortunate that we don't have to put that into a proposal to our local funds. We can use this grant to support that. So it's exciting to leverage a lot of these funds for capacity building, instructional material development, learning spaces for students. We think we have a good plan here. The almost all the directors right now is I just sat on a call on Friday, and Brian Kumquist, who's the division director for special ed for the State Department, alluded to yet another funding source coming under the guise of special education dollars. So no information beyond that at this point, just to back up and get right to what it might be and what the priorities are under them. Each one of these funding sources does have, as all grants do, specific stipulations around what we can spend money on and how we can prioritize the use of those funds. So we're waiting on bated breath for this 5th special ed funding source to come our way. Just Friday afternoon, in fact, that it was mentioned that there might be another small coming to all districts. So we will see. Very exciting, yep.
And I'm not aware of any other COVID money coming, except for the money that's coming through the special ed department from the state.
So in the final section of my report is just other fiscal updates. We were anticipating a draft audit to be completed before Thanksgiving. I've not yet seen that, but I think it's happening soon. And then once that draft audit is finished, our auditors will be moving on to our EFS audit, which is more specifically right around our educational spending here in Hebron. So we'll be doing that, and we'll all be completed by December 31st. And then the last enclosure you have is the general fund report. We have our current uncollected balance of $481,000, is representing a little under 4% of our remaining budget. Although a lot of those items are sort of reserved for additional hours that are laid out in some staff conditions of employment, some of our substitute teacher hours, which don't get encumbered into this budget, some tuition reimbursement as part of the teacher contract. So although you don't see them encumbered there, they're sort of earmarked for different purposes now. So we're just keeping an eye on where we are there, and we'll be, as we move further into the year, be able to maybe make some recommendations of some transfers, to focus on some other initiatives here, but we don't have any transfer requests for you this month. And that is the conclusion of my report.
Thank you so much. Heather Pettit, I have a question. Enrollment, I feel like I asked this last month, so I'm asking it this month too. Am I correct in reading this that we gained 6 students in 1 month? In district enrollment 689, last month's total enrollment was 682.
Yep.
So we have,
It's not my report, but I can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Baird.
Yes.
It was in your sections. I'm sorry, Caitlin.
No, it's in my section.
Oh, sorry. It's in somebody's.
Yes, that is correct.
So I feel like last month, I don't remember the number, but I feel like it was similar. So are we every month getting 6, like, more students?
I think that was just the movement in that from last month to this month, but I can go back and double check that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for Caitlin? Ally Schmeisel?
Thank you. So for the ESSER dollars, I'm just trying to get a better understanding of these, and it's my understanding with every iteration of the ESSER funds, like they've had their own kind of focus, right? So what's kind of different about these ESSER dollars as opposed to like previous ESSER dollars, like just in terms of the focus, I guess?
The previous ESSER dollars have been more broad in what we can apply the funding to. These are specific to IDEA, so all geared towards our special education needs in the district. So specifically the ESSER dollars, it was broken down into 3 sections. So the first section was around recovery efforts. So there was $30,000 there geared towards recovery. So where do we think that we might see needs as it relates to, the pandemic, right? So where do we want to focus some funding based on that? The second section was a $25,000 special populations bonus. Seemed very broad.
It was called the bonus grant. We didn't have to pursue it, but we did.
Seemed kind of broad.
Similar, yeah, so.
Still special, you go, please.
The concept was to identify supports for any students with IEPs that either had delayed or interrupted or regressed learning due to the pandemic.
Okay.
So the $25,000 recovery grant was to further supplement that effort. So that's why we have things like tutoring for specific students. That's why we have multi-sensory learning space that might help students de-escalate and feel more appropriate to learn, at certain points of the day. That's why we have the speech and language support measure in there for the anticipated need in the coming year. So not all districts pursued that secondary $25,000. But we did because we felt we could articulate it based on the priorities of the grant. And the third one was the dyslexia-specific grant, and we attempted to use it for professional learning for our staff when we were told we could not do that. So instead, we pivoted, and we're now using it for instructional material development for our students.
Okay.
Yeah, the first round of funding, going back a year and a half, was like a reimbursement for like expenses. And we started getting money that was really geared towards accelerating learning for all students. But there was a lot of broad discretion over like how you might use that funding. And we didn't get a lot of funding, $250,000 or thereabouts, I'd want to say.
CRF funding?
No, the second round, the AYP, and ESSER2. But anyway, it really funded our floating interventionist, which we ended up hiring somebody. We ended up having a vacancy in that position, and the person we hired was interested in working part-time rather than it be a full-time one-year position. We've been able to leverage it as a 0.6 this year and a 0.6 next year. So actually 0.2 more than we originally had planned for. The funding for tutoring, funding for our LPN. So we kept one LPN this year, and it's our desire to continue with one LPN indefinitely. And the discussion had been to ease that into the budget over time. So this year it's fully funded with those grant dollars, but next year it was only slated to be split funded 50%. So, that's a budget consideration for us as we move forward. But that's how we've utilized, those funds.
And are there, for these newer ones, I guess, so the ARP IDEA, the ESSER2 IDA, and then the FRC, are there conditions outlined in accepting these funds that are stated in these grants?
So I called Tom Boudreau, who is the fiscal manager for IDEA, because the one concern that we had that we wanted to double check was the concept of maintenance of effort, that we have to satisfy as a community each year, that we spend at least as much locally each year in and year out compared to what we use through federal funding. And because our allocations are so small in Hebron and we spend quite a bit locally on our education, we are okay. And that was the only concern that we addressed and had confirmation from the state consultant who oversees the funding that we would be okay.
Okay, and what about, sorry, because I don't know if it's actually here or somewhere else, but I've heard that some of the sort of requirement, if you will, in some arenas for accepting federal funds means that you must abide by certain mandates. So I'm talking about the mask mandates and things like that. So is that a condition that's outlined in accepting these funds?
I'm not aware, well.
That has not come up in any of my conversations at the state level with the trainings that we've had under the grants, but I'm not sure if.
They did discuss that broadly over the summer. My understanding that was more tied towards like the larger amounts that we had gotten earlier under the American Rescue Plan. I know the American Rescue Plan Act required universal masking be included in your plan, but the reality is it's like we see districts all over the country that are going in different directions, and I'm not aware that they're losing their funding. I know like right now we have the governor's executive order, so we have to be considerate of like our state funding, which is a lot more than our federal dollars. That's the only thing that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Chair's report. Okay, I will try to be quick. Chair's report. So thank you all very much. We are confirmed to have our Board of Ed workshop with our attorney, Jessica Ritter, on December 20th at 6:30 p.m. And she will be coming in person, so it'll be an in-person meeting like we have been having. So thank you very much for being flexible. I know it's a hard season to do that in. In regard to other boards in town, the Board of Finance elected Diane Del Vaso, our previous board liaison, as their chair, and Mike McCormick as their vice chair. The Board of Selectmen kept Dan Larson as chair and Gail Richmond as vice chair. So the boards have been discussing the board liaison positions. The Board of Selectmen has, for the last 2 meetings, I believe, at least the last 2 meetings, has had discussions on liaisons and then tabled it. Some of the thoughts of some of the members of the Board of Selectmen was that, they're kind of, for lack of a better word, antiquated. The reason for having them, at least in the Board of Selectmen, were mentioning that initially it was for RAM, because that's a regional board, and so there wasn't as much, it was a little bit more difficult to get information years ago, or they felt that. So I'm not sure that the Board of Selectmen is going to go forward with their liaisons at this time, which is fine. They mentioned that they would reach out to the chair if they had a question, or, which, Gail did every 2 weeks, to be honest, to give her report to the Board of Selectmen. I think that's fine. We also have minutes, we have videos. If there's an issue, I feel confident that they feel fine coming to the board. So I'll give you more update, but right now we don't have a liaison from the Board of Selectmen. And the Board of Finance, so they are still discussing their liaisons as well. I had a very nice conversation with Diane this week in regard to that. They are meeting tonight, and we'll have more discussion on that, and she will let us know. And we talked about, obviously, the Board of Finance is a little bit different in that, like during budget season, they would potentially like to be involved, or they would like to notify us when the audit comes out if there's any recommendations that we can help improve. So we talked about what that would look like, and maybe just inviting them at certain times when they would like to speak to the board, instead of like them having to, a lot of this has to do with their time, right? Like, it's a lot for people to come out, like the Board of Selectmen's meeting every 2 weeks, and then come to like all these other boards and their meetings, and we have to be respectful of people's time. I mean, we want them to have time with their family and for themselves as well. So I will let you know. They're discussing it tonight, what they decide as a board. And if they have a liaison, I'll let you know who that is. So in regard to that, we did this new setup. I don't know how people feel about it, but I really felt, especially going into budget season, that we all needed to be able to see the screen as we go through each budget line item or series. So if we deduct anything, add anything, we know what that looks like. And we just, instead of all of us kind of turning around, that's why we move the audience this way, so the whole board can kind of see the audience over there. Sorry about Don, Caitlin, and Rachel tonight. But the board can see the audience, and they are also welcome to come up to the end table, so we could put presentation materials there, and also the speakers that want to speak to the board, or people that are presenting, like this evening, can also sit there. So that's the thought process. If they were a liaison, they're welcome to, also join the audience, because as I said before, liaisons are really, they're not to come to the board really to speak or give, they're not voting members, or it's more to bring back to their board what the boards are doing. Unless they specifically ask to speak to the board about a specific item. It's because it's like 9:35. And I think that's all I have. I will say, in submitting the calendar that we discussed at last board meeting for next year's calendar dates, I spoke to Dr. Baird about this as well. Every summer, right, we have the retreat for the 2 days at the end of July. So we don't really have a July meeting, which is fine. It's the first summer, fiscal year end is not, still in process. But we don't have an August meeting on there because the retreat is at the end of July. And, I don't know if, we don't have to decide this now, but sometime later we might want to think of adding a special meeting on July just to have a business meeting. The retreat is not a real business meeting. It's more of setting goals and for the board of the upcoming year. So that might be something we want to do before the school year starts. So I'm just giving a heads up now. We might not, but we can see what that looks like next year. And that's all I have for my report. Committee updates. So the policy committee and Diana and Nikki, I apologize that this is the board's second read. So usually we go through on the second read, we go through the policies, and then we vote on them. So usually we have a first read, which was last month. Unfortunately, you didn't have those, but hopefully you got to read through them before tonight. So this is the second read and some policy changes, and some of these are new policies, and Dr. Baird is going to help me discuss them. So the first one is policy 3008. It's our food service policy. So a lot of this language was updated specifically in regard to negative account balances. I don't know if you recall last month, but I mentioned we had some negative language in there about, if we had students that, were in a negative balance, that they could only get a cheese sandwich but not a regular meal. And, obviously none of us want that. So that was taken out. I don't know if you want to speak to any other updates on there, but that was
That's the big one.
that was the big one that we wanted to take out because that's not appropriate.
We streamlined, there was some redundancy. There were two food service policies. We combined them into one. We worked with our food service director. Caitlin really took the lead on this, so thank you very much. Caitlin, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Oh, no, there were 3 food service policies.
Oh. I think one was a regulation. but-
Oh,
Right.
I don't have much to say. We just sort of tried to pull the language together in an order that made more sense and sort of highlighted the different sections and made sure that in some regards, there was some redundancy, but in some regards, the different policies were contradictory towards each other. So bringing them into one, I think, was really necessary to do to make sure if there are any updates, we're not contradicting ourselves.
We did some previous policy work around, or actually it might have been more the admin regulation, but we updated our gifts policy so that we could receive a donation to pay off food service debt if somebody was in collections. And we have pursued that in the past when we work with our hunger action team around soliciting donations for that kind of thing. So I feel like it's a really good, solid policy that includes requirements that we have to have in order to get our food service reimbursements from the federal government. But that's kind of it on this one.
All right. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions or discussion on this policy? We'll vote, I'm hoping as a group later, but we're good. All right.
And like I said earlier, these are the last batch from the big audit, and they were really sort of left at the end because I don't want to say they were low priority, but they were not as much of a priority as some of the other ones we updated last year.
Okay. The next policy is new. So it's 4015. So it's on nepotism. We didn't previously have a nepotism policy in district. So this is for consideration. Basically, it would restrict employment of relatives of any board member or the superintendent specifically. I'll be honest with you, when we first went over this policy, I did have some concern about that piece, only because I think it's appropriate, but given the staffing shortages, if somebody had an immediate family member that could be a substitute, but I think overall it's a good policy to have in place. It's not good not to have a nepotism policy. And so I don't know how other folks feel, if you're okay with the language that's in here.
I'll just say this is not a required policy. So
No,
there's a lot of policies that are required, you must have them. This is one that is optional.
Any questions?
I think it's a good one to have.
Okay. I think it helps avoid any potential conflicts or liability issues. Okay. So field trips, is this one where we have the red? You'll see the red line. I asked Dr. Baird to put the red line in, so you'll see the changes.
So you have a clean copy and then the red line copy immediately following. This policy, the committee had a lot of discussion about, probably the most of the policies, I would say. And engaged in making some different changes.
Yes. And it will require approval if there's a field trip overnight or out of state, which I don't think we do actually that often here. But if it were to occur or a request was made, it would have to come to the superintendent and before the board before that would be approved. And then we did reflect, like, we just wanted to put a reflection of our volunteer policy in here. So we felt that was important to make sure that any volunteers on field trips, have to adhere to our volunteer policy, so we added that section in.
We also included a reference to the fundraising policy, which you don't have in place yet, but it's part of the group you're looking at tonight.
What's next? So are there any questions in regard to this piece, or comments or discussion?
I think the changes make sense.
Amanda, thank you. All right. So that brings us to the fundraising policy, 5029. And really, I don't know if Dr. Baird wants to speak to this. I know part of it was how we raise funds, like as a district compared to maybe other entities like the PTA might do a different fundraising, but it would really be, we wouldn't use any like outside source.
Yeah. This is, I don't want to say, I don't know that it's a required policy, but I would highly, highly recommend you have a fundraising policy, something that outlines your rules of the road, if you will, around fundraising. The two pieces that got the most discussion were whether or not the PTA would fall underneath the policy or not. The way that it's written, the way that the board subcommittee designed it, this would not apply to the PTA at all. Like, they would do their own fundraising under their own fundraising rules that they would establish for themselves, and we don't have anything to do with their fundraising, except be the happy beneficiaries along with our students of their fundraising. But it means they can do whatever they want, and we're not making rules for them. You could lump them in so that they would have to follow whatever your policy is. That's not the direction that the policy committee wanted to go. And I think that there's some benefit in that direction. It really frees them up and allows them to go off and do fundraising in ways that you don't have to have any oversight of. It sort of releases your responsibility in some ways into like how they're doing their fundraising, because they're clearly a separate entity. The other thing that got a lot of discussion, not a lot, I guess, but was the prohibition of crowdfunding activities. Again, PTA could do that. They could do, GoFundMe and, I don't know, other ones that are out there. They can do electronic, raising of money out there. But if we were doing our own internal fundraising, we would not.
Yes.
Most of our fundraising is really related around like maybe a field trip, or we have pajama day tomorrow. Like, so that would be an example of a fundraiser. Like, ours are much smaller. Especially because we don't have a high school, so like, it's just a little bit different.
Any questions or discussion? Amanda Veneziano?
I'll only echo that I think it's important that we kept the PTA not part of this. They have their own insurance. They are an entire entity of themselves. They have their own regulations with the state. So I think it's great that we did not lump them in with this.
And frankly, if we were going to be like wanting to raise a large amount of money for something, it would be easier for us, the PTA, to do that kind of on our behalf and for us to partner with them. There's nothing that says we couldn't help promote it or, be a part of it. But then they would raise the money, they'd oversee it, and then they would make their purchase and we would accept it as a gift.
Yeah. All right, good. And our last one is 6010. So this is the video and digital tools in the classroom. And so what this policy does is, it ensures that any videos being shown are aligned to the curriculum, instructional curriculum in the classroom, that they're receiving permission from the administration in each school. And you'll see the form on the second page. So it's really just to make sure that the activities are appropriate, that, they're not watching like a 2-hour movie just to pass some time. Not that I believe anyone would ever do that in our schools anyway, but it's just, it's good to make sure that anything that the kids are watching, that it aligns to the curriculum.
Yeah, and this, it wouldn't apply to for example, we use Mystery Science as one of our science resources. They have short snippets let's look at how shadows are formed, or, something like that. That doesn't need a prior approval. It's one of our, curricular resources that is vetted and that we use. This is really for enrichment activities or, something of that nature. And the other component here is just putting some rules on the road around digital tools, how those go about being approved. And, technology is great when used judiciously and appropriately, but there are rules around student data privacy that exist, and there are steps that need to be taken to guard that and to vet resources before they're being used. So this is not a required policy, but it's one that I would recommend that we have, just to sort of put some rules on the road.
Heather?
Yep, Joe Margolis.
Thank you. So I think this is a fantastic policy. One thing I would like to see some language in here, which I don't see, maybe it is, regarding anyone using their own device. So my concern is maybe not so much the teachers we have on staff. My concern is with the substitutes, full-time substitutes, anyone that's not the regular educator, staff member, everyday staff member. My concern is that they may not be aware of this policy, and they pull out their cell phone and they're showing a kid or maybe a group of children a video. So that has happened in this school, and that should be a big no-no going forward. So I don't know if there's some way to have this become something that is every time someone's onboarded, they sign off on it.
Yeah, my mind is racing around some of our other policies that we might have on the books, and whether it would be better for that to be in that policy. I'm specifically thinking about we have a policy around people bringing in digital tools, but it might only be about students. It may not include staff. So I'd want to look into that a little bit more before I'd be able to really give a good recommendation about, is it on this one? If it's specifically about staff, because this is really speaking to instruction, that might fall under the personnel series. So I'd have to give that some thought. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. Yeah. It could also be something that's included in our employee handbook.
So when we bring a temporary substitute in, do they get the handbook? Are they signing off that they have read and agreed to everything within that handbook before they start going into a classroom?
Any new employee, yes. Yes. Our employee handbook, yes.
Yeah. Every substitute gets that book and they sign off?
Every employee.
Okay.
It's part of the onboarding process, yes.
Okay. That's good.
Yes, that'd be good to have it in there. And maybe it is in there.
Yeah.
I don't think I read your employee handbook.
I will make a note of that to double check, but yes, every employee as part of the onboarding process gets the employee handbook.
Perfect.
I think that's a good idea, especially, and I mean, what a daily sub is one thing, but then you have long-term subs that are substituting for a while, and so they would be part of instruction, on a more consistent basis, So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we don't have anything existing in policy that speaks to substitutes. I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So if the idea is really around people who are not necessarily a consistent employee coming in day to day. So it isn't so much para versus substitute. It's really around, or teacher versus para, for example. It's really around substitutes specifically.
So yeah, I would say a temporary sub or even a full-time sub. Somebody who's maybe in the classroom but not necessarily in that classroom with that same group of kids all the time. So that's generally, I think that's our biggest potential flaw with this.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the employee handbook is a good idea, but I don't know that it would be sufficient. I think it would still need to be in policy somewhere. So the question is really where?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if I was giving a recommendation about what to do right in this moment, I think you could still adopt this policy because you can always revise it. And we could do some work at the policy committee to look at where it should best live, whether it comes back and as an addition to this one as a revision, or I'm thinking the personnel section just might be a better place for this to live. But again, I gotta look at that some more.
We do have this, not to put it on Mr. Ariano and Mr. Larkin, but building principals are responsible for the implementation of this policy within their school. So I would assume that that would include any instructional staff in a classroom. So not that,
Just,
you know,
talking to them, it just doesn't call out substituters or
yeah, it doesn't. It says teachers.
temporary employees, anyone who else would be instructing children that are not full-time staff of the district.
Yeah, but I don't know that this policy, like, in my opinion, I think that this one really speaks to like films being used in the classroom and like apps and things being used, where I feel like that Joe's point is more about like people using their personal device.
Yeah.
And like showing
So it shouldn't
students
be
their
used.
personal device.
Yeah, that, we have to have that somewhere. It's thinking your
That's why I
employee
feel like I
handbook.
just gotta look into it more.
But this is brand new, correct?
What's that?
Policy is brand new.
This is brand, yeah, this doesn't.
So, right, so that's my only concern. Like, I'd like to adopt it tonight and then like revise it if we have to, because we don't have one at all.
Right.
So if we don't adopt it tonight, we still don't have anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
it's,
not to
I,
contradict myself, but I will say this, like, any policies you put in place are not really, they're not in force until the next school year. So like, the only exception to that is that anything that we're updating, because that's like a mandated law, well, the effective date of the law, it's like required, whether it's in your policy or not, because law trumps policy. But your bylaws around creating policies is anything that you adopt. So even like the fundraising policy, for example, it's not in effect until the next school year. So
I feel like we need to change our bylaw then. That'll be my next one.
Madam Chair.
Ally Schmeisel.
Hi, thank you. So, one thing that I should have thought of earlier that I didn't, so I apologize, because I'm on the policy committee, so I apologize. But I'm wondering if it would behoove us to include language that indicates that parents will be notified of this policy annually, and sort of with an indication of where the link is for the approved list of the apps. And I'm thinking of it because we have such an increase in use of digital tools, especially the apps, that I know that, like, we might know where the list is, but I don't know if all parents know that there actually is a list. There's this really great approval process and that they can find it. So I'm wondering if we might just add language that says, parents or, caregivers will be notified of this policy annually, inclusive of the link of where it's located or whatever, the approved list. There's a prettier way to put it, but, you get my point.
We do send out mandated annual notices, right?
Yeah,
There's an extensive list. So is that part of, like, and maybe Mr. McKinley could answer too, is that part of the student data privacy piece? Is that part of those?
it should
I
be.
think it is, because I know we do it.
I'm like 99% sure it's already in the family handbook. Either way, like, as we adopt policies, I start flipping them into a folder that I then use over the summer to update the family and employee handbook. So this is already going in that folder. So it's easy to do, because that is how we notify families of like our annual notices, is through the family handbook. But yeah, I mean, we could certainly put that in the policy. I mean, it might make sense to refer this back to the policy committee, given the questions, and look at, like, Joe's point, should that be included in this policy, or does it need to be in a different policy? Sort of bring them back together if it's,
Yeah.
if there's another policy to look at.
I agree. I don't know if we have to make a motion to do that, but, because I do have another question too about the form, about videos, films that are greater than 20 minutes, and sort of where does this live? So what if you have a classroom, for example, that like every Tuesday, Thursday is watching PBS Kids, like it's part of the routine. It might be 18 minutes on Tuesday and 18 minutes on Thursday, but like combined over the year, that's a lot of TV. So I'm wondering like where that would live, and if we could talk about that.
Yeah, and I probably want to invite the principals to the meeting to talk about it.
Yes.
I think there's also some acknowledgement that the code protocols we're living under right now have influenced some of our practices, right? So like we want kids to like quietly eat their lunch. So they're watching, I was watching them, as a celebrity reading a book, but they were watching a video, and lunch is 20 minutes. They weren't watching it all 20 minutes. They're under the 20 minutes. But like part of the reason they're showing that video is that the kids are quietly eating and engaged in the video while they have their mask off. And we're not going to be doing that forever.
Right.
They're going to be back in the cafeteria and then outside for recess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it makes sense. I don't like having it on the books, but
It's not going to take place until next year.
yes, until I revise that policy.
You can refer that to policy too.
Yes, I think so. There's a couple, actually, regulations I'd like to change. All right, so we'll refer that one back. And I think that's. So at this point, I would like to make a motion to adopt the policies 3008 food service, 4015 nepotism, 5000 for field trips, 5029 fundraising.
So moved.
Second.
And Denise moves. Ellie Schwartz seconds. Any discussion? All right, I'll take a roll call. Heather Pettit, aye. Amanda Veneziano?
Aye.
Ellie Schmeisel? Aye. Alex Crawford?
Aye.
Diana Morales?
Aye.
Joe Margettis?
Aye.
Nikki Matthews? All right, motion passes unanimously. I don't think I need to make a motion, do I, to refer this back to policy committee?
I don't think you
No.
need to make a formal motion.
All right, and so we will table policy 610, refer back to the policy committee for discussion. Anyone's welcome to come to the committee that would like to be involved in that. All right. Got 2 minutes. All right. Liaison, of course, Education Foundation. I don't believe anyone.
No.
Amanda Veneziano, no. School Readiness, Amanda Veneziano.
I was actually not there. Mrs. Uriano?
When we met, we did some review of the ways that the QE money, our quality investment budget can be spent. We did some preliminary conversations about our family engagement activity that's going to begin. We're going to plan it in January for the spring. And then our next meeting is Tuesday, December 21st.
All right. Thank you very much. Wellness Committee Liaison, Ally Schmeisel?
We didn't meet.
Okay. Shared Service Advisory Group did not meet. We'll be looking to set a date soon, now that everyone has new boards and new officers, or potentially not new officers. Old business?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
You missed the first half of the liaison.
Oh, I did? My thing? Sorry, Joe. Resource Management Committee, Joe.
We did
Martinez.
not meet.
That's why you didn't say anything.
Just let it go.
Student growth.
1 minute, so.
He's like, keep going.
Got this.
I didn't meet the 10 o'clock deadline.
I know.
We could still do it.
I don't think so. Student growth and District Advancement Committee did not meet. Communications Community.
Did not meet. PTA did not meet.
All right. Thank you, though. Old business, we have none.
Oh, actually do.
Joe Margarita
10 o'clock.
going to make a motion to extend our meeting past 10 p.m.
So moved?
All right. Anyone second?
Second.
What was that?
We have to make a motion per our.
What was second?
Oh,
It was me.
Amanda.
Figure that out, yeah.
Anytime our meeting goes past 10 o'clock, per our bylaws, we have to make an emotion to
It's
extend
going to
them
be like
past.
10:01.
End discussion right now. All right. Any discussion? All right. Really fast. Heather Pettit, aye. Amanda Veneziano.
Aye.
Ally Schmeisel.
Aye.
Alice Crawford.
Aye.
Diana Morales.
Aye.
Joe Margettis.
Aye.
Nikki Matthews. All right. So we are extending past unanimously 10 p.m. All right. Old business. Joe Margettis.
Sorry for the
No, that's
delay
okay.
in this, but
Not you.
we're working on the budget schedule for January. So the only day that does not work for me is January 27th.
The 27th.
And I believe I
Diana-
shared with you the dates that I wasn't going to be here, but I can call in.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And our next meeting, since we're on that subject, in regard to that, is January 6th, which is not our regular meeting, but that's the night, so it's a special meeting. It's the night that Dr. Baird is going to present his recommended budget for next year. So that's our next meeting date. Any other old business? New business, is there any new business that anyone would like to see on the agenda for next month? Okay, board member comments. Joe Marquez.
I will make it quick.
Oh, it's okay.
I just want to recognize, Heather, you've done a fantastic job. You're back to being chair again. You're doing a great job. Amanda, thank you for stepping up and volunteering to be vice. And Ally, again, thank you for stepping up and volunteering to be secretary. So all three of you, I appreciate the effort of what you're doing. I've done this for a couple of years now, so I know what it takes. And everyone else, thank you for your time. And these committees, they take time, but it's all about what we're giving back to the kids and the town, so.
Well said.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're a good Board of Ed team. We'll do good things for kids. Any other board member comments? All right, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn at 10:03 PM.
So moved.
Amanda Veneziano moves. Any second? Anna Morales seconds. Any discussion? All right. Heather Pettit, aye. Amanda
Aye.
Veneziano. Ally Schmeisel. Aye. Alice Crawford. Aye. Anna Morales.
Aye.
Joe Margaitis.
Aye.
Nikki Matthews. All right. Motion passed unanimously. We are adjourned at 10:03. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.